So no, it's really nice. So. And you also do stuff at the hospital too. I haven't talked to you since.
No, yeah.
I say I don't talk to you.
Yeah.
That is good news.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I bring it to farmer.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
And Jill always sends out the queens.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like, I have not. I have not had any bad cases yet.
Well, then we got a lot of stations for you. So since you guys are separate, we don't usually.
I know you just don't really deal with us just before.
Yeah, I don't
It's
get to
confusing.
conversation. It's like, absolutely needed. I talk with your friends.
Yeah.
They're mine. That's
Yeah.
privilege. Your person, then it's a different story.
I just like dealing with so like. Those are the ones that we hate. Like,
Yes.
It's every.
And that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's more frustrating than when you have. Like,
Yeah, I just get so frustrated because I got to do
Court Lane, now I have to.
you gotta get systems like it's fine and ever rolling the regular on. I had the wrong camera, so I turned it off. You know, so anybody that's watching, you know, is on the.
So they. Yeah, that's my closest.
That Highway 12 one. Highway 12 wreck.
Was that one of those Southern County, wasn't it?
Oh, Southern County.
Yeah.
Less people are going to that. Nice to see there. Nice. There, I think we're Nice.
So it's just Clarkson or west of Clarkson. Is she? Yeah, this is a thin runner of you. Well, we'll have clear.
Summertime.
Yeah,
So that's summertime.
well, it's the first nice one.
Mhm.
And we just put up there David's. Ratio. We're probably all camping, that's right. Sweet, we just get started.
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Little thin this morning. So I yeah, just wanted to say hello. I think today we've got Laura's not gonna be here today, so
You're going to.
sounds like her sister's getting induced. So that's pretty cool. And then so this morning we're gonna start out. We got Sonia Lee Nooch, okay. She's malpractice attorney amongst a lot of things. Pretty awesome way. She's gonna come. She agreed to come and just speak with us about documentation and things, pitfalls and things to look out for in terms of reporting and how we document it, and just I'll let her explain the rest of it. And then Dr. Brown's gonna do a presentation if there's time. So anyway, I don't know if anybody's got any questions before we start. Things come up. Year, anything? Okay. Well, I don't have much for you. The chief's he's still downtown at 6:01. He's leaving early in day 2, so he can make up here. But yeah. Anyway, I think Chief, you working on camera?
No, we're good. It's,
Okay.
if anybody's asking, like from Clarkson or something, I had to use link number 2. So you might text them at the station, tell them go to link number 2.
Yeah. Another question was going to be asked about Vietnamide and
Yeah.
usage of it. You gonna talk about that?
I'll cover it.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll let her go. Anyway, Sonia Lee,
Okay.
floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. I've been asked today to give you a presentation, as Richie said, basically explaining reporting and some of the issues that I deal with on a regular basis. So let me introduce myself to you. I'm Sonia Lee Nooch. I started In 1989, I was an intern at the Nestor County Prosecutor's Office. Thought I was going to be a prosecutor for my entire life. Stayed there until 2003, and then my McNichols talked me into coming over to become his friend McNichols. So if you guys are downtown, I'm right across the street from you. My work at Clemens Fromm McNichols essentially entails defending companies and their employees in a variety of situations. I started out doing ICRIM's primary work, and that's one of my primary clients. So I represent law enforcement officers and any other governmental employees whenever they get sued in any environment. So it can be, I've had jail cases, I've had excessive use of force cases, all the way down to mayors and those types of things getting sued for a variety of governmental entity type situations. The other area that's important to you that I do is I also represent St. Joseph Regional Medical Center in all of their malpractice cases. So I've been in here doing that same type of training, but with nursing staff. And I've done that for over 20 years. So we've seen a variety of cases in that world, as you can imagine, bad baby cases, wrongful death cases, premise liability cases. Even I had an option case where it was in that kind of an option to be in file. So we deal with those cases on a regular basis. And a lot of times they start with you. So they start with an ambulance call, and then we get them at the hospital, and then we end up taking them from there. So my job today is, it's not going to just be a report writing type of presentation. It's going to be, why are we doing this? Why is it important? Unfortunately, what I'm seeing in over the last 26 years of being a lawyer is the litigated cases are on the rise, as you can imagine. We do not have a shortage of people wanting to sue people, and they are getting more creative in the types of people or the pots of money that they're going after. And EMTs, paramedics are no exception. That's now I'm not going to say a new pot, but one that we're seeing more and more of just across the nation. Fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't seen a lot of that here, but we have seen those cases where the EMTs have been identified. I have personally been involved in cases where I had concerns that if I didn't get my piece of it resolved, that's what was going to happen next, was that the EMT was going to get involved. So I'm licensed in Idaho and Washington. I do a lot of work in Spokane, and that, well, all the way over to Thurston County right now. I have several cases for some reason in that area. Kittitas is my latest. So anyway, so all over the board, be lucky that you do not practice in Washington, or that's not your primary, where you go to do calls. They have situations where the damages are totally different. So you guys would have a lot more documentation to do. But so first question, that I'm going to ask all of you, and I know it's early and you're not wanting to talk to me, but how do you answer this question? I saved their life. Why do I have to write a report? What's your response to that? Because I made you. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. I mean, there's a couple of easy answers. You want to get paid. We got our billing person here. If you don't write a report, if you don't document what's actually what you did out in the field, you're not going to get paid. So that's one issue. You definitely want to get paid. The law requires it. I'm sure we all went through your certification, your licensing. There was a section in that training that talked about reports and how important that documentation is. So yeah, those are a couple of answers. The other issue is you, as I said, the potential of you being sued as an EMT or as a firefighter in this environment is on the rise. And so what we have learned is that the patient care record is the best defense in both civil and criminal cases. And yes, we're going to talk about both types of cases. In the current very aggressive world of the cases that we have some prosecutors who are apparently being what I was called overzealous, and they are starting to charge criminally law enforcement officers and medical providers, EMTs, with crimes associated with their care, which is a little bit scary. We just had a doctor, went viral in my world, back in Florida, who unfortunately had an error, a malpractice error during surgery, and he's been charged with manslaughter. So you see a doctor in orange suit who you're used to seeing in scrubs. It's a scary new world. So, and usually that, let me digress. That used to only be the case when they were drunk or high or something and they went into surgery. I mean, we got those cases, but that's not what this was. This was just a straight up malpractice error. It should be dealt with in civil court, and we're seeing people being charged criminally for it. So definitely a thorough, accurate, and complete patient care record shows consistent vital sign monitoring. Okay. Detailed clinical assessments and thoughtful decision-making can deter legal action or seriously limit its impact. The first thing that a plaintiff's lawyer does is get all of the records, even before they file suit. They get all of the records from their client and they start going through them. Most attorneys in this world are maybe bright enough to figure out what the issue is, but 99% of them have a medical expert on staff, and that person is, in their pocket anyway, let's say. That person is someone they send the records to and they say, tell me what you see. So if you guys are bored with this job and you want to make a lot more money, become an EMT expert, litigation support, and you can go testify in all these cases and say what your brothers did wrong. So, or brothers or sisters. So that's an area that they would just send the documents off. The person, then a medical expert, EMT expert, whatever it may be, looks at this patient record and they say, oh, well, this person didn't document X, Y, and Z. I don't see the medication calculated correctly for their weight. You have 4 or 5 areas here that you can potentially be able to sue this person for, and then they start going down that route to see if a lawsuit is viable. They usually try to settle it pre-suit because they're looking for an easy money grab, but if they can't get that through the insurance company, then off they go to filing. So that's why those things are key. The consistent, vital sign monitoring, detailed clinical assessments, thoughtful decision-making. The only place that you get to put, even though your brain is doing all of those things, you've done all of those things because you've obviously saved this person's life. If you don't write it down, it's as if it didn't happen. Okay? There's no way for us to actually prove that you did those things. So it has to be written down. Following your policies, procedures, and protocols. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in that world for you guys. I do not know all of your policies, procedures, and protocols. What I can tell you is that those things are what establish the standard of care. So if we are looking for a violation of the standard of care, if you don't follow those things, that will be the first question during the deposition that you will be asked. You will be slid whatever one of the issues are. You will work through those policies. They will ask you, well, isn't it true that you received a copy of this when you were hired? In fact, I have it right here and you'd sign the bottom line. So why didn't you do X, Y, or Z? So make sure you're familiar with them and you know what they are and you're following them, because that is the standard of care. That'll be the baseline for the standard of care. As I said, if it wasn't charted, it didn't happen, or at least you won't be able to remember that it did. Here's the kicker in these cases. We have a 2-year statute of limitations for malpractice cases in Idaho for adults. For minors, the statute of limitation is told for a maximum of 6 years. And then the clock starts running. So you could potentially be called in 7.5 years after a run and asked, what did you do? And the baby cases are the worst, right? I mean, if the baby survives, those are the most expensive cases I deal with in Idaho, are baby cases. So if you don't want to be caught cold 6.5 years, 7.5 years later on a case, and even 2 years. I mean, after you guys have done so many runs, it's crazy. And in our world with the nurses, we go through the exact same situation where we have 2 years after the fact, we're trying to come up with what we think, what they did. And I will show them the record and they're like, don't know. Do you know how many patients I've seen in the last 2 years? I get it. One thing that we've started doing here at the hospital, and it was actually encouraged by LifePoint, is if there's an event, and this is something for your risk management team or whatever to start thinking about, if there is an event that you think potentially could lead to litigation, you want to debrief that with an attorney. So if I have an event here, we have an event here that I think could lead to litigation, I then bring the witnesses in one at a time I'm their attorney. It's covered by the attorney-client privilege. I document everything they remember about the event within the first week and a half. And then I keep all of that in my notes. And then in the event we get sued, I have it. So I can go back and say, hey, remember you and I talked about this. And I can get extra information if I need it. So we've started that to try to eliminate this lag that we have with the statute of limitations. And I know Washington is 3 years. I mean, so it's, that is a problem for everyone. You guys fortunately are employed by a governmental entity. So in Idaho, a notice of tort claim has to be filed for any claims against you. Similar to Kootenai County Hospital, they're ran by the county. So a notice of tort claim has to be filed before you can file a claim against them. So you will get notice of it within 180 days. The complaint doesn't have to be filed, but somebody in the city will get notice of it. So you will at least have an opportunity to know that that might be a potential issue that's coming. So all of those timeframes, if it's not in your record, if it's not in your patient care record, it's going to be very, very difficult down the road to be able to remember exactly what you did. If it's there, absolutely easy. You can just look at your documentation, you can rely on your documentation, everybody's happy. If it's not there and it's a memory that you have, if it's critical to patient care, you are going to get nailed on deposition for that. I mean, they're just going to be, why didn't you put it in there? If it actually happened, why didn't you put it in there? It will always be questioned as to whether or not that treatment that you provided actually occurred. Did you actually do the calculation for, the weight for the medication? That's really a big issue. So, okay, so 2 cases from 2019, just in case you guys think I'm completely full of it. Neither one of them here. They happen in different places, but Elijah McLean, you guys may know about this case, 2019 in Aurora, Colorado. The paramedics administered a failed dose of ketamine without proper weight assessment or patient consent. Both paramedics were convicted of negligent homicide and sentenced to 5 years in prison. So, second one is just an example of a civil case. Patrick Hodges, 2019 in Detroit. That was a settlement for $975,000. The patient was found on the floor at his home, complaining of shortness of breath and chest pains. Paramedics, according to the reporting that we have, did not take any vital signs, provide him with oxygen, or follow cardiac chest pain protocols. They instead asked him to make his way to the ambulance on his own, telling him that he was too big to lift. And so he apparently died on the way to the hospital. He was pronounced dead. He had suffered a cardiac arrest. My guess is that they probably did administer oxygen, and maybe not. I mean, I don't know, but my guess is this could have been a documentation issue, but what's reported is what's reported. So what's reported is they did not take any vitals. I mean, can you imagine showing up to a scene where a guy's having a cardiac event, not taking any vitals or providing with oxygen? The likelihood of that occurring is probably nil. My guess is that they didn't report, but
Or they've seen them 100 times this year and they just got lagged.
yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. There had to be something. Yeah. They're like, oh, are you really having a cardiac event this time? Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that one for sure. Yes. But anyway, so that one was a $975,000 settlement. The damages in these cases, obviously the wrongful death portion of it that's big damages, but the biggest case damages are the ones who suffer, let's say, oxygen deprivation. So you end up having the person live, but they require 24/7 around the clock care in a nursing home. Those economic damages, those are the ones that just swing the clock, because we do have sometimes, depending on the type of case, we have limitations on non-economic damages in Idaho. But the types of cases where the person actually survives but is in a state that requires constant medical care, those are the wicked ones. So that 975 would be more like 9.75 in most cases. Okay, so we do have in Idaho, you live in a friendly state. We do have statutes that help with our assessment of your liability. Idaho Code 46908, part of the Emergency Medical Services Act, and when it describes liability for you, you guys are held to reckless or grossly negligent conduct. That's when you can be held liable. So our normal floor for medical providers is negligence. And for EMTs, because I'm assuming the severity of what you're walking into, cold with so many different variables going on, we do have a statute that raises that up. So reckless or grossly negligent is a higher standard. That's helpful. that makes it to where it's more difficult for a plaintiff to prove a case against you. So just a higher bar. Define it, very difficult to define, basically engaging in behavior that you know could potentially harm the person. So they, depending on the creative expert we talked about, they can get there and try to articulate grossly negligent or reckless behavior, but at least we have a higher bar. So we'll get a different jury instruction if we're going in on a claim, a civil claim against you. So that's helpful. So if you want to give me, or whoever your attorney is going to be, probably not me, but if you want to give your attorney the best opportunity to defend you and to be able to show that our behavior absolutely was not reckless and it was not grossly negligent, you have to be able to prove that through your documentation. That's why I'm here. I'm here to walk through what that looks like. Now, I've seen your guys' charting. I have an patient record. I have an example in here. Your narrative, I love it. First things you need to be is thorough. You have a narrative and you have the initials charted, right? So CHARTD. If there is something filled out in each and every one of those categories, your document looks fantastic. The ones that have 2 sentences and you don't have something in each one of these categories, it looks like you haven't tried that day and you needed your coffee. And what's going to happen is they're going to be, whenever they are trying to prove gross negligence or reckless, they are going to put 2 of those side by side and say, this is the standard. This is what a good patient record looks like. This is what somebody who doesn't care. This is what their record looks like. And that's what they're going to use as evidence, basically, against you. So, and it makes sense. This is intuitive. We're put these things together over time, put them together because it's important for us to be able to document everything, but we need a nice little format in order to do that accurately. So, chief complaint, obviously you get there, you guys know how to fill these things out. The biggest issue or item that I would add to is the history section. So you are getting a lot of information when you arrive. You're also observing a ton of information when you arrive. And I would highly recommend that you put this in your section. This would be the area, if I were talking to my nurses, we have situations where we have family members that come to the hospital and I know they are gunning because they're mad and they think somebody has screwed up and they are gunning to try to file a suit against them. And they're actually in the corner charting themselves. So they're writing stuff down. And I'm telling people, when you see that, I want you to note in somewhere in your chart, you guys, it would be in the history section, family member observing and writing down information. Why? Because I can get that in discovery. I can find out who that family member was and I can get that documentation that they wrote down and I can figure out what they think they saw versus what actually happened. So I know what my issues are. So in your history section, for you guys, you walk into a scene, you are getting information from everyone. The patient may not be able to give you information, right? So you might be getting information from family members. And I want you to document that. If you are getting information, let's say it's a domestic situation and you've got a woman who is completely unconscious, but he's got scratches all over his face. You could say male at residence explained whatever he told you happened and observed scratches on his face, asked if he needed treatment. He said no. Whatever it may be, whatever could potentially be helpful for you in remembering the situation, but also in making sure that you document everything that you are observing. Patient was found unresponsive, had to move gun away from his right hand, right? We're dealing with a potential suicide. Those issues come up all the time. Where was the gun? I don't know. It was moved by the paramedics. You guys aren't going to come take pictures first, right? So you obviously have to be able to remember what you're documenting, what you're seeing, and make sure that all of that somehow gets into your patient record because you are going to be helping yourself and others sort out the puzzle later. So just keep your eyes open. And because a lot of times you are the first people who show up and you have first eyes on any of the injuries that we're dealing with. So that history section becomes really important. Make sure that you put as much information as you possibly can. And then obviously all of the rest of it is as well, the assessment, whatever treatment was rendered. Don't just give me, little bits and pieces. Make sure you're very specific. I will take a step off here for one moment. These are the things where you are actually free typing, right? The rest of it, the vital signs and those types of things are kind of the way that they're charted is pretty consistent. When you are doing your records, I want you to visualize that record being on a PowerPoint this size in front of a jury and whether or not you would be proud of that. I have seen EMT records from all over the state of Washington, and many from the state of Idaho as well. And some of them look very professional. They use punctuation. Others of them use all caps. Some of them use all small letters with no punctuation. And so I'm trying to figure out where the sentences end and the next thought begins. And a lot of them have spelling errors that are words that should not be misspelled. And so if your writing looks like a third grader, no one is going to think you know what you're doing. And so I want you to picture it on a screen like this and say, would I be proud of this if a jury was reading this? And, you know, or my attorney is working through this with a jury, or with me testifying. You don't want to have to say 3 times, oh, I'm sorry, that's misspelled. What I meant was, or no, there should have been a period there. I mean, it needs to look like you care and that you took time. And whether the inference is appropriate or not, the way that your documentation looks is going to be the way that your care is perceived in front of a jury. So if your documentation looks thorough, well thought out, organized, you use punctuation, you use capital letters, all of those things, the jury's going to think you know what you're doing. If it looks like a third grader, they're going to think a third grader got sent to the scene and something bad could have happened. At least that's the thought that the plaintiff's attorneys are going to mind. Like, look at this. This is exactly the sloppy type of care that my client received. He would have lived. He would have, not had brain damage, whatever it may be. As I work with Jill Balmer here at the hospital, many of you may know her. She's our risk manager. She likes to say that in the courtroom, it really doesn't matter what actually happened. It's the narrative that they come up with. So it's always whatever the narrative that they're trying to create, that's the evidence they're looking for to support their narrative. So you don't want to give that additional information to them just by the way or style of the documentation. So take a little extra time. What's for sure, like I said, I know you saved their life. Why do I have to do a report? This is why. Yes.
What about AI assisted narratives?
I have a whole screen at the end. We'll talk about it. Yep, we'll get there. Because that has become an issue. Yes. Okay, so the first one was thoroughness. Next one is accuracy. How accurate is the information? So one of the cases, the one that I read was, how did he actually get to the gurney? Whether or you want to, so you're wanting to make sure that you are accurately documenting what happened. Clearly, there was nothing in the report that identified how that patient got to the gurney. I had a case recently in Spokane County where a young woman, it was a very bizarre situation. I was representing a apartment complex owner, and the apartment complex was built, it was on like normal ground level, but there was a staircase that went all the way down to the basement to the laundry room. And so this one goes to, and there's probably 12 feet between the door of the apartment and the stairwell where it begins. Okay? And it's all concrete down lots of stairs. And the gal in the corner, she had some kind of issue, and so she needed a screen door on her apartment because she had concern with people breaking it. So the management installed a screen door for her. Well, her friend comes who's never been there before. 2 friends, actually. The one friend opens the door, the other's holding the pizza. The one holding the pizza steps back to avoid the screen door, doesn't know where she's at, and falls to the very bottom of the steps. She ends up with a skull fracture, had several vertebrae in her neck who were completely, messed up, was in traction in the hospital for quite a while. The EMTs, their report, when I read it, said that they arrived and that they walked her up the stairs. Now, if she had been paralyzed for the rest of her life, that would have been a huge issue. And I was watching for that because and when I read that, I'm like, there's no way. But she was a big girl. I mean, she was healthy. So that I'm like, well, maybe that's what happened. Maybe she convinced him she was okay. Though a patient has no recollection of the event. She remembers the sensation of falling backwards, and that was it. Next thing she knows, she woke up in the hospital 4 days later. Her friend apparently was very difficult to locate, so we could not find her to find out what exactly happened. So the paramedic was the last person there. Fortunately, we resolved the case without having to drag them to court. But that was our question was, were her injuries somehow affected or increased if, in fact, the paramedics did walk her up those steps instead of coming her up and carrying her up? So huge issue. so this patient gurney transfer thing has become big. And so obviously when you document how that happened, it may seem like a non-fact to you, but it is a fact. I mean, it's very important how that happened. Each of these little things, these little pieces, you're like, oh, why should I have to say that? Because if they get an additional injury and they're trying to blame you for it, you need to be able to explain that it was not me. We did the transfer absolutely perfect and appropriate. That injury happened before we got there, not as a result of our error. That's what we're trying to defend against. So the next one is, does your documentation match your observations for this call? This, we'll talk a little bit about AI or cutting and pasting. I get it. You get in a hurry. You're like, oh, this case was really similar to that one call that we went on, and you cut and you slide it in there. The problem is your documentation doesn't exactly match what you actually observed, which is unfortunate because what you observed would have been, and if you had reported that, would have been a slam dunk for an expert would have reviewed it and been like, yeah, sorry, there's nothing here. That's what you're trying to defend against, right? So if it's off by even a little bit, then they can go and say, oh, well, here's the error. Clearly, they didn't know what they were doing because this says something different. Your GCS is 15. Is the patient actually normal and alert? Don't put that down there if they're passed out, right? Don't do it. So that make sure that what you observe and what you're documenting actually match up, so that you don't have any type of question that the information is inaccurate or that you weren't actually doing your job. So don't cut and paste your narrative. Inter-facility transfers, we've seen this. You need to document your observations. We've had cases where providers were documenting based on information that others provided to them. If that happens, you need to include that in your documentation. You know, nurse so-and-so or EMT paramedic so-and-so said blah, blah, blah. So that it's okay for you to put that in your documentation, but don't act as if it's your documentation. So if you're cutting that as if it's your own words. The assumption is if you don't qualify that and say information provided by facility was, you know, I'm not owning this. I'm just saying that's the information we were provided, and then put that in your documentation. That's fine. But do not put anything in your documentation that appears to be your observations unless it was in fact your observations. Make sure you qualify if you got it in there and it's somebody else's. Make sure you do that. Explain that. Complete. So you want to make sure that your the documentation is thorough. Now I've seen reports where one vital sign was listed. Now, do I think that was true, that you only looked at vitals once on, you know, a 20-minute call? Absolutely not. I know how many times you looked at vital times, maybe. What I would like to see is a constant monitoring. I want to know what those vitals were, and I want to see them documented in the actual record. Because again, it's that consistent monitoring, right? The more you document, the less issues we have in proving that you were monitoring it. If the person died of cardiac arrest, I would like to be able to see that you were consistently monitoring, you caught when that occurred, and that you reacted to that dip in the vitals. That's what we're looking for. How quick was your reaction time to it? If you reacted appropriately and you still couldn't save him, I can defend that all day long. What I can't defend is if you didn't know that his vitals dropped and we didn't do anything. That's the issue. So you want to make sure that you are listing all of that information, monitor it consistently, and document that. Explain the medical reason for your procedure. Why did you start the IV? It doesn't take very long to explain the medical condition that you were reacting to. So make sure you include that. Why did you give that medication? We saw that issue with the medication area. How did you calculate the particular dosage that you were supposed to give? For common interventions not completed. So with the heart attack situation, if you didn't do something that would be on your assessments, your protocols, that would normally be something that you would have given to this patient with that particular diagnosis, but you chose not to, you know, no chest compressions. Why didn't you give chest compressions? That would have been the number one thing you would have done in this particular circumstance. Because he had a gunshot wound in his chest and I wasn't going to go there. I mean, we had other things to deal with, right? Whatever it may be. If it's that obvious, you're just trying to shut that door. So did not do X, Y, or Z because and let us know, because there are certain protocols that everyone expects to see at certain calls. You guys know what those are. And so if it wasn't done, make sure, but you have a really good reason, put it in the chart. Let's not defend it later. Let's have it there. And then you don't have an expert who has to hear the explanation. You have an expert who looks at it and goes, oh, well, that's why. So yeah, no, there's nothing here. That's what you want the expert to say. There's nothing here to move on. You don't have a case. And then at the very end, I know your guys' reports require a signature. Get it, please. That's what whoever's supposed to sign it, make sure you get the signature. Don't. And I'll go through the next one. Okay, so it's kind of blurry, but this was a report. I got some good reports. I got some bad reports. I'm not going to shame anybody. And this is so blurry, you can't tell who I'm giving extra credit to. But this is basically, you see all of the fields that are completely filled out. You have that whole chart thing. All the explanation is there. I love that we have all of the categories identified, and we have whatever treatment was provided is laid out there, multiple ones. The people who provided the care, everyone's identified. We know who was there. We know what they did. We have constant monitoring, or at least multiple entries for vital monitorings. Love that. And then you have a lot of fill-in blanks, right? We run into this in the hospital a lot. Our system, Meditech, is brutal, and we have autofills, and the autofills are not fun. And the autofills, I spend a lot of time justifying. So what I spend a lot of time justifying is something that was put in an autofill that shouldn't have been. Patient is down in ER, but I've got a documentation that they're, participating in group. Really, that didn't happen. Obviously, they weren't sitting there and cooperative and participating. That was an autofill. Now I've got to explain it. When you have a category though, that it has information that needs to be filled in, if it's blank, they're going to assume that there was supposed to be something there and you chose not to put it there. So if you have that information, fill in all the blanks. Fortunately, it doesn't look like, I don't know if you guys have an autofill problem, but if it did autofill, make sure you correct it. Make sure you go through and make sure the information that pops up in the autofill is consistent with, again, your observations, right? This is all about you being able to defend yourself later, or giving me the tools to defend you later. This is my rock star, so you can't do anything with him or her. That's what I want. That's what I want to be able to say, as opposed to, well, we could have filled all this in, but we just didn't think it was necessary, or we just didn't have time. I can't. Those do not play well with the jury, I should say. And we got signatures. So yeah, again, more. Looks like all of our categories are filled out to the extent that we have that information. So this was a good one. Very thorough, very complete record. I love, when we attach those, all of the EKGs, this becomes issue. I have fetal heart monitors. I got really good reading those in a couple of cases. I don't like them, don't want to read them, but yeah. So any documentation you can include that justifies the treatment and shows that whenever you handed them off, they were in the best possible place that they could be, and that they had been given the best care that they could have been given. And when you handed them off, you were able to dot all your I's and cross your T's. That's great. I decided to go ahead and include refusals to transport as well. And part of it is because we have a statute. I'll go to that first. And again, in the Emergency Medical Services Act, the failure to obtain consent, it's okay. You will not be sued for not obtaining consent, as long as that person, physician, or hospital has acted in good faith and without knowledge of facts negating consent, which means if you roll up on a situation where the person is absolutely refusing treatment, you got to document the heck out of it, because those are the standards. I have to show that you acted in good faith and without knowledge of facts negating consent. So the person wasn't crazy as a freaking moon and whatever. Just, you got to document a lot. So how many of you in this room, maybe not, have had the opportunity to run into Eric Peterson in this town? Okay, right. Okay, yes, exactly. This is my prime refusal case. Okay, Eric Peterson was my partner at Clemens Brown McNichols when I started in 2003. For those of you who don't know, Eric is a brilliant attorney. He has a JD, and he also has a PhD in, I think it's marine biology, microbiology, something, reproductive biology, something crazy. He'll tell people he's a doctor. Crazy smart person, right? 2012, we're all sitting in the office, and Eric starts getting these bizarre sensations. He's like having a conversation, he can't move his legs. Next thing I know, like the next day he's crawling up the stairwell and he's like, I can't move my legs. He had no idea what was going on. You guys arrived at our office multiple times during that initial phase. They finally get him treatment in just about every corner of the world. And now his condition has essentially settled into what they call cataplexy-like syndrome. So if he hears if he is startled in any way, emotional, whether it's high or low, doesn't matter, he automatically goes into a catatonic-like state, cataplexy. But they call it cataplexy-like because Eric can see you, he can hear you, and he knows everything that's happening around him. So a bell rang at a shoe store downtown. He collapses over. The kid comes up, tries to steal his wallet. Eric can see it all. He can hear it all. He knows exactly what's happening. Finally, the owner of the shoe store walks up and stops the kid. And he's like, oh, I was just trying to find his ID to be able to find out who he was, whatever. So Eric's been all over town. You guys may have seen him. He got coned. We call it coning. It was a joke in our firm. He got coned at Home Depot because he passed out when somebody was doing a practice air gun. Boom, on the floor. And he just goes flat down. Like he can't stop himself. He can't brace. There's no bracing. It is like face plant wherever he may be. We were in the courthouse together for Judge Carrick's retirement. That in the old courthouse, they even had an air conditioner in courtroom 1. Y'all may remember it, and it would start up and it would have this like sound, boom, right in my lap. And he's a big guy, and so I'm holding Eric, waiting for him to come back. So he sits there. He cannot move, but he can hear everything. He can see everything, and so he's been in a lot of really interesting situations. He would go around in his wheelchair for a while, which was very helpful. But if you honk the horn to say hi, he's out. So don't ever honk your horn at Eric. So Eric was so tired of paying the ambulance bills because they're expensive that he put a note around his chest that you all may have seen that said, I tried to explain what was going on. Do not pick me up by ambulance. And I told Eric, I said, do you realize the situation you're putting these guys in? I mean, this is awful. You have completely checked out on the world and they now are rolling up on you and they have to decide, do they just leave you and let you just sit there? And I mean, it puts you guys in a horrible position. So, but I think if you checked his vitals and you read his sign, I would document the heck out of that. And I think we would be okay on his refusal to be transferred because he doesn't have a medical condition that requires him to come to the hospital. He has a medical condition that is the most bizarre I have ever seen in my entire life. And just so you know, the only connection that they've ever found, nobody has ever figured out exactly what caused it, but there was one other case in England and it had to do with a flu virus. And it's the same type of flu vaccine, sorry, not virus, a flu vaccine. So this person in England had recently had a flu vaccine of a similar strain and they have the exact same condition, but that is the only comparable scenario that we have. And he had recently had his flu vaccine, but I'm not never say that was the issue. We just don't know. Eric's just non-cat. So he had to retire medically, obviously, but if you run into him, don't worry. You can check his vitals, make sure he's not dead this time because Lord help us, who knows what all the other conditions he has, but he does have the sign. You are not going to always get that lucky. You're not always going to have a patient that says, here's my billboard, do not pick me up. So when you have refusals, make sure you document the heck out of it because we do have the ability in Idaho law to defend against it, but we have to have all of those facts. We have to know that it was in good faith and without knowledge of faith, facts negating consent. So just work through, I think you have a protocol that you probably go through step by step that tells you, when you can actually allow them to refuse. Obviously, if their vitals aren't where they need to be, then you're not in a position to do that. So just something to note. So for those of you who have dealt with Eric, thank you for, doing that, doing your service with him and the unique situation he poses. Okay, so I promised you I would get to IA. What about IA? This has become huge and this has become an issue in your world and my world. You probably have seen more publicity regarding the attorneys, maybe not because it's probably in my world, but we're seeing it on our side where a lot of pro se, not just pro ses, but a lot of pro ses are drafting complaints generated by IA. So when I'm defending a police officer, pro ses are oftentimes the ones suing them, not always, but sometimes, and in the medical malpractice world as well. And so what they go in, they type in their little parameters of what type of lawsuit they want to file and what jurisdiction they're in. And AI will generate a very large complaint that almost looks like it makes sense until you get to page 3 and none of the facts actually match what happened. And so it's becoming a problem for all of us. Briefing, attorneys are getting in trouble for putting in their parameters in AI and getting them to generate briefs. The problem with AI is it's not perfect. And if you tell them you need a case that says X, Y, or Z, if AI can't find one, they hallucinate. And so they create a case and they actually put Westlaw sites. So it looks like it's a real case. So we've got attorneys across the nation who are getting disbarred because they've been submitting briefs with hallucinated cases in them that were not real. And so the other side's like, Your Honor, I can't find this case anywhere. I don't know what they're talking about. And the attorney or the judge will say to the other attorney to produce the case. And when they can't, then it all comes out. So we are seeing sanctions and bar complaints and all sorts of things because of AI. You guys have the same problem, but somewhat heightened. AI, open sourced AI, such as free GPT, Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, they all violate HIPAA. So what happens if to understand what AI is doing, when you're putting that parameter, the information in, you want it to generate something pretty for you, this is a learning module. So it goes up into a cloud and that information is then reworked and then brought back down to you. But that all of that patient information is in this resource cloud that they are using to train their AI modules. So all of that is violation of HIPAA. It's the same for attorneys. We are violating the attorney-client privilege if we allow that information to be put into a free source program. So you absolutely cannot use that. There are programs. So when I was asked that question about, there are programs like Medical Scribe and others that are considered closed source. So what will happen is, and what we've been seeing is that companies will put together a similar AI module. They agree to sign a BAA, a business associate agreement under HIPAA, in order to make that HIPAA compliant. And so essentially they say, we're going to put this in some type of silo. The information will be put up and then put into a format that looks appropriate and given back to you. But we promise that it will not go outside of that silo. And so it will not be open sourced. It will not go into the universe of AI to be utilized to educate them. And so they are, in fact, HIPAA compliant. Of course, that's not free, right? That has an expense to it. And it should never be utilized unless your entire agency has bought it, purchased it, and then made it to where everybody has the ability to use it. I still think that and no matter what, even if you were to use AI to help with your narratives, it cannot be the sole source. As with an attorney or anyone else, if you are trying to use any other software program to generate words that you're going to have to stand behind, you have to double check all of that. Just like the attorneys who allow for case sites to go in or that were completely hallucinated. An AI tool can take the information you gave it and put down a report that is not correct. It may identify factors or a result that was not true, that you didn't, even though that's how it generated, they're not perfect models. So you need to make sure that even if you somehow were to get approval, get the financing, and this department were to start using that, you would have to double check that work. And I would say even probably more carefully, because you want to make sure that it hasn't hallucinated anything and that it hasn't put the information in the wrong order, or that it hasn't failed to include something that was critical. So it's not perfect. Certainly not my recommendation, but I do know doctors are using it in some facilities. They've been using, like the Dragon program and things for a while anyway, medical dragons programs that are not open source. So AI in its purest form has been used for a while in the medical world. But anytime I put up a medical record and it says at the bottom, and I'm, having it for the jury, and I'm having to go through 4 or 5 spelling errors, or it just changed the words into something else. I just had one the other day in a deposition. And I'm like, I think what this actually said was patient reports, but it said poured some more is what the statement in the medical record was. So I'm asking the guy, did you pour anything out? And he's like, no. So, that unfortunately that happens even in the Dragon program. And so they put this little disclaimer at the bottom that says, forgive any of the issues that because this was done with Dragon. And that's not helpful whenever you're looking at your document. I mean, you're saying, well, I think what I meant to say was, I mean, we came up with what we thought our closest description was, since he had poured some more. But anyway, so from my perspective, AI still has problems. It's not perfect. It's open source is definitely not HIPAA compliant. So be careful. There's that little thing at the bottom of your, Copilot. You want to click that little button and see what happens. But I would be very, very careful, especially in the HIPAA world.
I have a question from somebody that's watching by live stream here,
Yes.
but they were saying that they were asking basically if is that still HIPAA a violation if you don't use the patient's name in your narrative, but you put in the vitals and stuff. So
Right. So generally speaking, any information that we receive, I mean, you can remove patient identifiers, right? And HIPAA allows for that to be done for certain purposes, for education and those types of things. But for report writing, you're still talking about their medical condition. So yes, you've removed identifiers, but I would still be very concerned about utilizing AI in the scope of putting that information actually into your report. That would still cause me a lot of concern. You may not have a HIPAA violation per se, but you're going to have a potential issue with your medical record no matter what. So I don't like any patient information going up into the cloud. I just don't. I think that the description of it without getting consent from the patient, we've done that before, where it's been utilized for medical purposes, or they consent to allowing it to be used for HIPAA, their condition to be used. Sometimes just removing the patient's name is not enough. People can figure out who you're dealing with based on the conditions that they were exposed to. So I would say be extremely careful. I would not. You do not want to have that come up. Okay, so I think that addresses everything about AI. And the only other thing that let's go back about dealing with the HIPAA issues that I was asked to address with you. A lot of times, you'll be in a situation where a police officer will come up to you and say, hey, I'm in the middle of this investigation. I just had a few questions I have to ask you. How many of you have been in that world? Yeah. And you're like, should I talk to this person? So again, we have HIPAA rules for a reason. There are some exceptions. If it's a coroner's inquest, there is a coroner's exception that allows for that. But generally speaking, that's a very rare situation. And I would still, even in that situation, even if under the HIPAA rules, even if you're allowed to disclose it, it doesn't necessarily mean you should. Okay. So in my world, I am always concerned with how the information that is not contained in a report that is being taken verbally is going to be construed. So the words coming out of your mouth may be one way. The police officer who's working on something may hear something else. And the way that it gets documented in his report may be completely different. So it always causes me concern with any type of voluntary statement from that standpoint, but also from a HIPAA standpoint. So the way that HIPAA works is if you're not dealing with a coroner's case and you're dealing with law enforcement officers, they can serve a search warrant and get all of your records. And that's what they are supposed to do, because HIPAA requires that the subpoena be signed by a judge in order to require you to talk, to be able to be free to talk about it and compliant with HIPAA. Okay. So when you are in a situation where they don't, oftentimes they try to subpoena records, that's the appropriate way to do that. So now they're getting searched. I've worked at the prosecutor's office, and I think we've got them in that favor zone. So you get a search warrant, or they serve a search warrant, they get all the records, we're good to go. But then they want follow-up questions. That is not part of the search warrant. I did have one situation where we had the New York NYPD show up and have a search warrant in this little hospital. So Jill will tell you all about that. Well, probably not, but we did have that happen one time. And so we did comply and give them the records, and then they wanted to do follow-up. And I said, we have to have a court order. And that judge from, it was actually New York working through Northern Idaho judge, did incorporate in an order and actually ordered the individuals to have essentially a Q&A. We consented to that as long as I could be present next to them, because otherwise we probably could have objected, but we didn't. As long as I was present, that was fine. So if they just walk up to you and say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you, that's not HIPAA compliant. You're not trying to be ornery. don't tell them, just say, I'm sorry, I can't, just look at my records. This is where if you're thorough in your records, they shouldn't have to have any follow-up questions, right? So just say, hey, I've had other runs since then, just look at my records. That'll give you the most thorough, my most thorough recollection about what actually happened. That's what I would direct you to. And it preserves you, because if for some reason you said something in that conversation that then gets reported in the report that the victims or whoever reads, then that can come back and we may be dealing with an additional statement outside the record that for liability purpose, we're having to put our arms around. When I'm defending anyone in our medical world, I need to know that this is the only statements that you've made. And that this is my universe and this is what I have to deal with as far as the statements that I need to look in for you. Yes.
What about when you're treating a patient, a cop comes up to you like after a car wreck, you smell alcohol?
Right. Yeah. So you're observing, right? And that's what he says. He's probably going to be standing right
You get
there.
asked a lot. Do you smell any alcohol? Do you think he's been drinking?
Right. Yeah. And you're in the moment and he's in the moment with you. And you can say, I'm going to document that I smell alcohol, or, I'm going to document that I don't smell alcohol, but feel free to smell yourself, because frankly, the police officer can't rely on your observation. He shouldn't be. He needs to be relying on his own observation. So yeah, if you're in the moment and you're saying, I'm going to be documenting, I probably wouldn't even address it to him. I would just say, I'm going to be documenting that I smell alcohol and I observe whatever. So it's part of, he's observing you do your job. If he's observing you do your job and reporting that, that's fine. If he comes up to you afterwards and says, hey, what did you think? Did you think you smelled any alcohol? To say, I'll put it in my report and I'll let you know. And you can get a copy of it. That way it's part of your report, I suppose. And I get that. I mean, we're not trying to stop police officers from doing their job. So I'm not saying that we be obstructionists. And if they're in the heat of the battle with you, things are going to be said and that's going to be a different line, I would say. But it's when they call you afterwards and say, hey, did you smell alcohol on that person? That's the problem. Just say, get my report. And document it. So in that history section, that's where you put it, so yeah, observe, came up on an accident, smelled alcohol, whatever, individual said he'd have 5 beers, whatever, he starts free flowing, you're not the officer, you're not doing his job, but if there's a conversation there, had to remove the whiskey out from underneath his back in order to provide whatever treatment. Perfect. Add that.
Right.
Put that history in there. Then your police officer is happy. He has documentation he needs because they're going to get a copy of that record. So just include that. Yeah. Yes. So from a HIPAA perspective, that we just want to be very careful that we make sure that we follow the HIPAA rules, but we also don't want to be instructionist anyway. So that helps by having very thorough reports. But then there's nothing that police officers need to ask you because it's all there in our report. We've complied and nobody can be excited about us not complying with it. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question, Reggie?
You did.
Okay.
That's
Okay, perfect. So I'm right at my hour. I just want to thank all of you for all that you do. Even though I decided to be a lawyer at 8 because I was, weird, one of those kids. I do come from a family of medical providers. My mother was an EMT. She was a nurse and then an EMT. My mother-in-law ran the Jerome. I'm from Southern Idaho, just so I came up here for school. So my husband and I are from Jerome. My mother-in-law ran the Jerome ambulance for years and years and years. Be thankful that you live in this valley because Jerome County is right next to Twin Falls County. If any of you have been out there in Southern Idaho, our dividing line is very similar. It's the canyon. It's the Snake River Canyon. And so my mother-in-law, as a paramedic, we had a lot of jumpers in our world because that was a very popular place to commit suicide. And so depending on which side they jumped off, depended on which group of EMTs got to rappel down the wall to get them. And so she always had crazy stories about the things that she had to do both as an EMT and then as assistant coroner. So I appreciate it. You guys are in my blood. I know that the work that you do is absolutely invaluable and for our community and obviously for society as a whole. So thank you for your jobs. I know it's hard. And I just hope that perhaps you got something out of the conversation today that can help you and protect yourself from people who want to file lawsuits. That's my job. Make sure you guys are protected. Any other questions? I appreciate you answer questions throughout, but any other questions for me? Yes.
I'll try to make it. Obviously, law enforcement relies pretty heavily on their body cam, dash cams, slowly making its way into EMS.
Yes.
You Have you dealt with any of that, or do you have any recommendations?
So I haven't dealt with it in the EMS world yet. And we obviously don't have it with patient care. I have dealt with it a lot on the law enforcement side. And I can tell you 9 times out of 10, the video has saved our bacon. Because individuals who are suing are not necessarily good recorders of what occurred. And so by the time that information is relayed to their attorneys, then the narrative, as Jill says, you know, it's whatever they want the narrative to be. So they just put that information in there and it is absolutely nowhere near the truth. And so 9 times out of 10, I can play the video and I can say, this is what happened. And it literally saves our bacon. Like that is all we need to do is the body. Now, that being said, I'm dealing with some cases right now where that's not the case. And generally when I get those cases, I either say, okay, we still have a good reason to defend it. I just don't really like the way this went down. Or we say, let's figure out how to get this resolved pre-suit. So, you know, I would say if you're doing proper care, it would be a benefit. If you have concerns about your care, it may not be. That's a horrible thing to say, but that's basically where we're at. A lot of times the video themselves will show the intensity, it will show the immediacy. And I've also had officers go back and look at them and say, oh, I didn't realize that was said. Like because your brain misses things, right? We have tunnel vision. Law enforcement with excessive use in worst cases, it's proven science. So you get tunnel vision and you actually block out everything that's going on around you. And you are looking at the suspect and you are trying to figure out where they're at. I had a one up in Rufino that was public that you guys probably saw, and the person came at the officer with a knife. It came around the corner in the dark at them, you know, knife raised, and the family was in the house, and the family had said that, you know, there was no way that their child would have ever done that, and the body cam video from 2 officers showed exactly what happened. So I can spend 2 years litigating it and making a jury decide between the credibility between the officers or the family, or I can play video. And so 9 times out of 10, I like it. In this world, that's going to be, I can see that becoming an issue. I wouldn't be afraid of it, I guess, but you're going to have a little more logistics concerns because you don't want it to interfere with the patient care. And then what is it actually going to be capturing? So if you're in, I mean, we're going to be seeing belt buckles and things, right? So it's beneficial when you have someone away that is actually getting the whole scene. But if you're diving in, you're going to get audio, obviously. So that could potentially be helpful. But it may not be as beneficial just because of proximity to the patient. But you're going to see transfers. You're going to, see that. You can look at the monitor. You'll be able to see vitals. So I could see that there be some things that were beneficial, but it can be a sword as well. So you want to make sure that your care is spot on. Yes.
Recently had some training and I just want to see your opinion on it. Is theoretically, I'm going to say that a lot.
Right.
You have interfacility transport. We're taking somebody from this facility to this facility, knowing that they're going to come back to there. So facility to a hospital, still get back.
Right.
And I'm not saying we do this sort of thing, but you create a narrative in a Word document here. So the return trip, it's basically the same as the first. It's just the locations are different. You copy and paste that into your reports. But otherwise, that's fraud. It's not original.
Right. Yes.
Is that, do you concur with that?
So the definition of fraud within Idaho's law, that the reason that they would say, and I could see a trainer saying that would comply with or fit within that definition, is because it wasn't, again, your observations of what is going on in this particular transport. So in a medical record, you were supposed to be observing what occurred this time, what you actually observed in this transport. And so and especially if you got in the habit of relying on that, you're going to miss information because that the first time that you drafted that may be a completely different transport than whenever you brought them back. And so I would say you could, if you just cut and paste and you never went back and re-looked at it to make sure that it was accurate and that, and modify it. It's your words, it's your typing. So I'm not worried about the AI component. I would, so if you just cut and paste it and say, yeah, that's the same transport, that would be fraud. If you cut and paste it and then you modified it, just because you don't want to have to retype, Nelsburg County Jail or whatever the facility, may be, those types of things, you modified it to correctly reflect what the second transport looked like. And then to me, that's not necessarily fraud because you're not just cutting and pasting the two. You're modifying it to accurately reflect what you saw on that return transport.
That's the class I took. That's what the attorney said. Like most of the time, people get hung up because it's 3 o'clock in the morning and they're tired and it's just
Yeah,
kind of a BS deal. They're just transporting them.
right,
If it takes them, don't fill out, don't change something.
right.
Same way with AI and whether it says generated by AI at the bottom or not, if you cut and paste out of AI, ChatGPT is open source. They all have code embedded in them that you can't see. And it's just like, I think a lot of it happens in, schools, a lot of those have, you turn on SAN, they put
Yeah.
their AI reader, was this AI? It'll tell you what percentage was human, what percentage was AI.
Right, yes.
Because that embedded code inside the.
Yeah, and the experts are taking those documents now, doing that exact same, you're exactly right. So, yeah, they're looking at all of the records that are generated and being able to determine, whether or not this was actually documented by what program and stuff it was documented by. So yeah, this is the new world, right? So here we go, and that's going to become a bigger problem no matter what we do. But yeah, and I think a lot of times you guys do think, oh, it's just a interagency transport that, it's not that big of a deal, but you guys have saved me in big cases, probably 15, 20 years ago, on my jail cases, because crazy things happen out there and you guys were there and were able to treat the individual and document very appropriately what had happened in the jail and what the injuries were, and then came and picked him up and took him to the hospital later. And when I went up on a motion for summary judgment on a failure to provide adequate medical treatment for the jail, the fact that they had called you and the treatment that was provided and then what was documented in the transport, I got summary judgment. We didn't even have to go to trial. So, I mean, those things don't just put 2 lines, because those things are really important. They were documenting everything, and the federal judge, they even appealed that to the Ninth Circuit. I was arguing in front of the Ninth Circuit in Pasadena, and that judge was looking at our records and he's like, yeah, there's nothing here. And we upheld the motion for summary judgment. So you don't think that what you're doing is maybe, the most critical thing you're doing that night, but you never know. It very well could be. In those interagency transports, you guys be very key in the medical treatment that we provide to, if for us to, accomplish the duty that we have to inmates. So yeah, appreciate that. That was very helpful. Okay. Any other questions for me? Okay, told you I'd be about time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take a quick break. These are slides.
Thank you so much. Try yelling at them if they're there. Just to make sure they're good. There's a very process. Like, I'm not looking for anything. I'm not here to leave. It's to me. Yes. Please
Be
be.
all red. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be weird, like.
I don't mean.
We'll see. Well, and I get it.
Well,
I don't want to see.
Like our city.
It's
close. It's not too low. You have to balance. It's usually because it's like.
It's not forex. If I don't, the young way I wouldn't read what's. Let's see, I'm calling.
And we're new that. So I didn't know what they just. So I had 6 phase features, or yeah. First one was 3 phase features. Yeah. Second one, it was also purpose. Third one, it's like good. And it's second. Yeah. Fourth one was just. I got it. There's some. It goes. You got stuff. Hey, you never was dealing with it. So it's the sounds of you're not gonna get ready to fall.
Nice one. Saying between the costing and operating a chat screen because it was right just past the next. I don't know if they can spin it, so if it is not. If you off the base anywhere,
I mean, it's embedded.
But then I can just take it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the only way to not have to, usually does it like, so for us, who cares? It doesn't matter, you know, like, but they'll take, like, I see like, those notes where they'll take those sticks on there and they'll say, this is 90% activity. Some colleges are now saying, you can have this much credit. Okay, yeah, it's like, you have to write it out, like, you can. Take a piece of it and put it in there, take the line, put it in the flash and say, hey, maybe this is sound not professional. And you work the sound of it. It's a fault of the they can detect it, but it's also saying this is not what based on when this question is like, you know, that's not the original fault system hadn't worked at all. You can tell that. Because if you whatever problem is in there, you press the button, something doesn't sound close, they ask you these questions. So it's crazy like that. Is like somebody's hand the lights and but the thing is that the ChatGPT would have been off on like the learn with off Reddit. Reddit, it's like with Create, you can add anything. I mean, it's something I call Reddit right now and add a damn where's the purple food at? You know, where's all the blue food? And have like a reason why the blue food disappeared. Even blueberries like that blue. Some of them were kind of purple.
Maybe all of a sudden that's.
All of a sudden, that's. I don't know. You just yes. It's an weird. That's Reddit. Weird. Thank you.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's fun to mess around. I wouldn't believe my face. It's probably like 90% of the city. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, you can get as much help as you want. Take Reddit. You can take any threads you want and go.
It's not like YouTube. Like you can have a learn more.
You go to
Find anybody who knows anything.
my brother's done it. Just went through all. He's like, I got in black. I think somebody's watching me from a telephone pole down. Like, man, you're paranoid, man. What have you been looking at? Look at black market. Yeah. Black market squirrel fighting. What? What you gonna watch it? Maybe you go fight.
Do you have any more artists?
I don't know.
Or total or?
Maybe it was 51. Maybe 44.
He's here. Yeah. So great. Just talking about the it's right. We were so and one that you stay here that you place. He said, but you guys need to watch your say, yeah, this is not how this works. We're not here. Yeah. Well, that's why you started. Well, that's. All right, you guys ready? You're going. You would have to work too, wearing this or
It
no?
was working without it. Awesome. So I think we're all right. I could hear everything just fine.
Before you get too involved, Jax talked to me, procamide, eye drops. They're getting to be, they need to get redone or whatever. And he also looked at cases, and I think we've not used them in the last like 5 years, one time. Do you guys still want and need them on the ambulance, or do you feel like it's something we probably can take off the ambulance?
I've used it one time in 20 years.
It wasn't needed, or do you had it so you used it?
It wasn't absolutely necessary.
I said I was okay with removing it. We'll keep it in the protocol, so if something changes where we want to start adding it, it's in the protocol, so they can always just throw it back in. I'll tell Jax then not to worry about renewing them, and when they're gone, we'll just take them off the ambulance. Fair?
Fair,
Yeah? Okay, I said, before I made the call, I said I was gonna ask you guys at run review and see what the thoughts were, so. Today, I'm gonna do a couple pediatric cases we had, just as I think it's good to go over some peds stuff. And then we're gonna do a GU, so OB-GYN and male genital emergencies and all that stuff. So we're gonna see some real fun pictures later. All right, dispatched to a 9-year-old male for a breathing problem. Chief complaint, shortness of breath. Dispatched to a house, single family for a 9-year-old Weight is approximately 20 kilos. Complaining of breathing problems. Patient's mother called 911 because her son had a sudden onset difficulty breathing. This, I think, is one of the things documenting. I've noticed you guys getting really good. I wanted to kind of talk about is being sure to add the weight that you think the kid is when you see them, because peds are so weight dependent on medications. Put it in your documentation so that we can see it, so we know your math is right. This case, actually, they put it in, and then the math was not right for the medications that were given. So it's kind of a good teaching tool. I talked to this medic later, said, "Hey, yeah, you were a little bit off." So, yeah, I just really spaced it, just gave the wrong amount. It was underdosing, not overdosing, so I'm okay with it. No problems were made, but it just kind of helps with me when I look at these calls later. Arrived on scene to find a 9-year-old male patient sitting in a chair in his living room. Upon primary assessment, our patient has a GCS of 15. His airway is patent, breathing is labored, and has no obvious external life-threatening bleeding. Patient is in obvious respiratory distress, has an increased respiratory rate, accessory muscle use, and he is tripoding. Patient does not appear cyanotic. His skin is not mottled. He is alert oriented. He is tracking us as we walk in. Patient's mother states that he has had something like this happen before. He's been taken to the ER. Patient's mother also states our patient does not have a history of asthma or allergies. Patient coughed and it sounded like the classic croup seal-like barking cough. It has wheezes in all lung fields and stridor around his throat. Patient's HENT is clear. Patient states that it is getting harder to breathe. Patient's vitals on scene are all within normal limits. So good things on this one I like. So whenever you say tripoding, it scares us half to death. It's like the lethargic baby. Whenever you type that lethargic child, it's always scares us. Those are horrible words to use. But in this case, I liked he was tripoding because I imagine he actually was. But it shows that he's not cyanotic, skin is not mottled. We can tell that he's having a hard time breathing, but we can not tell he's in like imminent respiratory distress, that he's actively like dying in front of us. But whenever I hear the word tripoding, I'm like, okay, is this kid actually dying? Are they having epiglottitis? Is their throat about to close shut? But the way that it was worded and then afterwards explained it, I like how that was worded. So good explaining on this guy. What do we all think the diagnosis is on this guy? Croup, yep. So it probably is croup. They did the right things. Patient's initial assessment picked out outside in the colder air. Patient states the cooler air is not helping. He was placed on a gurney and wheeled out to the medic unit. He was loaded up. Once in the back, was placed on a duoneb, breathing treatment, cardiac monitor. States breathing is getting easier with the duoneb. Patient's work of breathing is also improving. Patient was transferred to St. Joe's Code. Patient en route was given 6 milliliters of Tylenol. This is the dosing error here. It was 20 kilos. How much should we about be? The quick, easy way to do this, just for quick, easy math, how I do a lot of it, is whatever their kilos are, divide by 2, and that's probably the milliliters of ibuprofen and Tylenol that you're giving a kid. The math actually works out when you actually do it. It's within half to a milliliter normally. So if the kid was 20 kilos, he could have easily had 10 mLs. That'd be the easy. So they definitely underdosed him. Which actually, I think it actually was supposed to be, even the milligrams is way short. But either way, but then 10 milligrams of Decadron, that's proper dosing being given. Patient was monitored en route. He remained in a stable condition. And this might have been, I know some of you guys do this, or if they just did get Tylenol, Decadron tastes horribly. So we sometimes just mix it with a little bit of Tylenol, which is perfectly fine to do, just so the kids will be able to drink it. Patient monitored en route, stable condition, moved via gurney to the ER bed, and it was all kind of handed off. So really nothing else on that guy. So hospital course, I ended up seeing this kid. Upon arrival, the kid was already breathing better. I just gave a full dose of Motrin afterwards, just kind of help him start feeling better. Honestly, so my mom think I did something to the ER, but this kid didn't do anything. So you guys fixed him by giving the Decadron. The duoneb is plus or minus, makes a difference. I observed him for about an hour and a half. He was breathing fine and then left. On these croup kids, the biggest thing like we've talked about is Decadron. Sooner you give Decadron, the sooner the kids start getting better. Also going out to that cold air, getting humidified air, which honestly, I think the duoneb, I don't think it's actually the medicine that helps the kid. I think it's the humidified breathing it in that actually helps him, honestly, which is fine. If you give the duoneb, you give a steroid, because that duoneb has that steroid inside it, that they are getting it in the bronchioles a little bit faster to help with that bronchial dilation, help open them up, get rid of some of those secretions. So it's not going to hurt them In some patients, it can cause a worsening cough, but will help with their breathing. Because when you throw that in there, it can cause a little bit of a pneumonitis and kind of inflame the lung tissue itself in the alveoli. And that can sometimes cause that cough that is still there. But the cough we don't care about. The cough means they're moving, or that means the kid's doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's hard when they just get that real tight stridor sound because they're not getting the air. The duodenum helps open that up. So a lot of this is when you have these croup kids, you just have to look at the kid and see how they're doing. You guys have all seen kids that are barely breathing with croup. They're and they just have that face like they're either going to die. Like, okay, throw the duodenum on, give them that Decadron, and just kind of wait and let it heal. And it will get better. You just need to have it happen. And the duodenums are plus and minus. That's why I say I'm plus and minus on duodenums on this. I prefer duodenum over albuterol because it has that steroid component with these kids. It does help a little bit, but honestly, I think it's that humidified air is honestly what makes the big difference. But give them the medicine while you're doing it. It's not going to hurt them other than causing a little bit of tachycardia, which we expect, but it's not going to be crazy in these kids. So croup bronchiolitis. Most common one is parainfluenza virus type 1 is the most common cause, mainly during fall, winter, peaks normally around October time. So we're kind of past it, but you also will notice this will be in asthmatics as well. It's a lot of the season changes. So like honestly, today would be a bad one because we just had kind of that cold, a little bit of wet, rainy stuff. So now we're kind of now getting hot and dry. Those sudden changes in temperature and seasons will cause kids to kind of get these little croupy coughs. Personally, I know mine, Ollie, whenever we have a change in season like this, I guarantee it's going to be within the next 3 nights. He's going to have a little croup attack. I have to give him some Decadron, and then he's going to be better in like a day. It is, and we've even seen it personally when we were driving from Oregon. We were over in Portland and just driving through. Once you get like Hermiston and it's dry, he like went into one when we were driving. And it's just like, it's that sudden change. And those are going to be more of your asthmatic causes rather than virus causes. And you treat them still with steroids. But then it's not the virus causing it, it's just that change. And that's more of the allergy asthma side of it. Pathophysiology, croup initially affects the nasal and pharyngeal mucosal epithelia, then spreads to the larynx and trachea. Symptoms occur in some mucosal tissue edema. So that's the thing that's making all that sound is you get a bunch of edema in that subglottic space. That's what then narrows the pediatric airway, thus causing these symptoms. Sure. This is what the x-ray, they call it the steeple sign. So here's actually your trachea. You kind of see this line here. There's your trachea, and see how it gets really, really skinny. There's a little bit of color change right there. That's the steeple sign. That's actually the trachea being narrowed in a croup-like cough that they actually catch in there. So that's what they're trying to breathe through, is that little tiny straw. When you tell trachea is actually sliding down here, and it's here, goes to here, and then up here, it's back up to here. So it's that mucosa that just kind of closes up, and that's what causes that hard time breathing there. Classically, it's a 1 to 3 day prodrome, mild fever, then turns into this. The bark-like cough is the most common, that high-pitched inspiratory stridor. The key thing is that you guys are really good about is listen to the lungs, see if they're wheezing. If you're not hearing the wheezing, then it's probably that upper airway stuff. At least have to get stuff to get it working, because you're going to hear wheezing when you listen here. Stridor, you shouldn't hear down here in the lungs. You can hear like, that's the verbal, like you hear, oh yeah, they're wheezing, but you're like, oh, I can just hear it through my ear. Not when I auscultate, that it's all going to be upper airway. The barking cough usually lasts about 3 days. That's why we do the Decadron. It's about a 3-day steroid. Normally lasts the entire time, but the barking helps. Tell parents though, if you do end up giving Decadron and leaving a kid, tell them they will still have the cough, but the breathing will get much improved. That's the big thing. The cough will still be there because they still have that irritation. So the cough's not going to go away. The cough, I explain to parents, is good, because that means they're getting all that mucus and they're pushing it up and they're trying to move the stuff. That's what needs to happen. So the body's doing what it should do when it coughs and gets that mucus out. Differential things to remember on these that you don't want to forget is look in the mouth and be sure to ask parents, hey, is there any chance they swallowed or breathed something in? The foreign body in the airway is very similar to a croup sound. You know, when they have that stridor, is that they stuck a toy down there and it's swallowed and sitting in the trachea. I always, on these kids, have them open their mouth. I take a good peek back there because I'm also looking for possible peritonsillar abscess, retropharyngeal abscess, epiglottitis, a big epiglottis. Maybe you can see when you look back in there. So I was like, on these kids that have that group, like open their mouth, take a good peek in there, feel the neck, be sure there's no crepitus, be sure that the trachea is midline. Really just do a good look in that mouth because that's the key things that you don't want to miss. These are kind of things that I said down here. Oh, and then yeah, ask for foreign bodies. So those are kind of the main things you want to think of when you have croup and bronchiolitis. And here's that picture we just kind of covered there. Oh shoot. So this is mild, moderate, severe. The different like how they just kind of separate them when you have croup based on the description. So occasional barking cough, no stridor at rest, going to be your mild. It's still just a single dose of dexamethasone. Okay, so we're still giving dexamethasone. Frequent barking cough, stridor at rest. This is when you're more moderate and they start having the retractions. This is when they consider nebulized epi, which you guys do not have. We have. That's why I just have you do the duoneb instead, because the nebulized epi just adds a whole nother instance to it. And I like to allow the Decatron to work because most of the time, once you get the Decatron in the patient, they rarely need the racemic epi to actually make a big difference. So I don't like to add extra things if we don't have to. Then the severe is going to be marked retractions. This is when they're going to be nebulized epi, and we often have to repeat doses if they're like this. Again, dexamethasone the entire way is the biggest thing. Intubation, obviously, when they're near respiratory distress, but it's very, very rare that happens. The one nice thing you guys do have about Decatron, even if the kid can't swallow, you can still give it IM, still give it IV. It all works the exact same. So if you are worried about airway with a kid, like, yeah, I still know if I feel good about having them swallow something, give them a shot. Same exact thing. Okay. It works it's actually no different in speed by IM, IV, or oral. It's all the same speed and same bioavailability. So, questions about croup? Kind of out of the season, but good little reminder. We had to have a case the other day. Cool. Dispatched to a 2-month-old cardiac arrest. Cardiac arrest dispatched to a house for a 2-month-old, weight is approximately 5 kilograms, complaining of unconscious fainting, near fainting. It's reported that the mom had fallen asleep, and when she awoke, she found the patient to be not breathing. No medical history was gathered. It was unknown how long the mother had been sleeping. For her last known well, it was not reported where the patient was when she was found. Scariest call ever you go to, right? These are the ones that we all hate. Upon arrival, patient was being carried out to the ambulance by the engine 7-4 crew. Patient was unresponsive, not breathing, and pulseless. Patient's skin was ashen and gray. Airway check and found to be clear. Initial rhythm was V-fib with following rhythm persistent asystole. Patient's skin color did improve with oxygenation and ventilation. No signs of trauma or bleeding were noted. Patient's CO2 was minimal with adequate CPR in progress. Assessment. So manual defib, ventilated at 15 liters per minute. They did defibrillate once. It was successful. That was when they were in the VFib. Then it went to asystole. Make note there is an IO cannulation unsuccessful. And then there was one that was. So this was they first tried the tibial on the kid, didn't go. So then actually tried the femoral and it did work. So the new femoral did end up getting the IO cannulation and worked. Then we did epi, ended up tubing the kid. Capnography was successful with that, and then obviously came to the ER. Again, I was there too. Patient was transported emergently, placed supine with padding under the shoulders, wheeled by gurney into the room, and then put there. So hospital course, I just really continued the Palace algorithm. This kid was dead. There was really kind of no saving this kid. I did a little sodium bicarb. I added a little lidocaine in there. ET tube, we did shoot chest X-rays, be sure it was placed. I imagined it was. There's kind of the biggest things. But the biggest thing I did is then I had a discussion with parents. First I had to talk with them outside the room. They wanted to come in, which I think is reasonable. Saw everything we were doing. Basically, we went through one round of ACLS with them. And then afterwards, that's when I declared the kid dead. That is the biggest thing on these kids, is getting the parents to the ER is the biggest thing. being sure they either ride with you, which I don't always think is the best idea because you have a kid that you're trying to work in there. Even if they ride up front, if they do not have a ride, or cops give them a ride, or someone gives that parent a ride to the hospital. Because the issue is I can't do much until I get parents there and have a discussion. So I think that's one of my biggest things is we have to be able to get parents there somehow. And I don't think you guys make the call and if they're good to ride with you. And I would be totally agreeable if the patient doesn't ride with you. I don't think that's also the right thing. But if that's the only way, considering that as an option, most of the time I think cops are normally at these calls anyways. They can give the parent a ride or get a family member, but I also don't think the parent probably should drive themselves either in these situations. We don't need to have a car wreck as well. That's the biggest things. I have to have a discussion with parents on what happened, but then also preparing them for these. A lot of these cases, I mean, most of these are all SIDS cases, you know, sudden infant death, probably sleeping, suffocated when they're sleeping. That's what happened in this case. She was sleeping. My guess is didn't know you rolled over, suffocated the kid probably. And this kid had been suffocating for a while. We don't know how long. So it was like a 2-3 hour process from when he went to bed to who knows how long. So it's like there's not much we can do for that. I just have to have a good conversation with mom and dad at bedside and just kind of talk to them. In all kids, pediatric codes, airway is hands down the most important. Being sure to get that airway and making sure it's open, patent, there's nothing in there. That's the most important thing. So be sure to check that airway. That's number one. This case, consider the femoral IO for small peds. Richie said that they failed on the tibia, but the femoral went right in real easily. So in these little tiny kids, it might just be game just going straight for that femoral site. Some of the protocols, maybe start trying it and be sure to practice to feel good with it. But the hardest parts, these are kids, and you go to whenever it's a stressful case, we always go to what we're good at. And tibia is what we always do. So it's kind of hard to get into something new, but just kind of put this in the back of your mind, just kind of maybe try this for these little kids. It sounds like it's working better. The one thing I always want to mention is also the thing of your mental well-being. Being sure to discuss the case afterwards with everyone that's there, or even involving the hospital crew. In this case, I talked to some of the guys and said, hey, if you guys want to talk, kind of debrief about it. Everyone was good, which I think is reasonable. By then, I think checking in, especially if you know someone had a case like this, check in with them, being sure they're doing okay, especially people that have kids about the same age, or even if you have kids and you have a pediatric code, they suck. Like, there's no one, if anyone says that, yeah, I do great with these, I love these, yeah, they're sick human being. Because no one feels great about this, you know? You shouldn't feel great about it. So I think the biggest thing is just being sure to look at yourself and being sure to ask for help when you need it is a key thing. I'm always here to help talk about them too if you ever do need to, especially go over a case of, hey, this is bugging me. I just kind of, will you go through it and read through the case and look at the stuff and go over it with me? I'm perfectly okay doing all that. Or, you know, talking to one of your senior officers and having them go through it, I think it's a key thing. But remembering to think about yourself in these cases and what it makes a difference to you, I think is big key on this. I think the worst part is when you have kids similar ages and you remember your kids there personally. Me personally, when I was on my PICU rotation in residency, I was 4 hours away from home. We had a kid that was 4 months old, ended up having pulmonary atresia, so no pulmonary arteries going out. The kid was doing great, but then finally when he got big enough, there wasn't enough blood going. Kid was 4 months old, and Ollie at the time was exactly 4 months old. Their birthdays were like 2 days apart. And we had to pronounce this kid dead like 2 days later, not like 4 hours away. Such a hard situation. That was where the pediatrician took me to the side and had a discussion with me. We kind of did a debrief, and I realized how important that side is of it, is like thinking about yourself. And I was a resident, so you're thinking just to push, go see the next kid, go, you know, trying to learn and all that kind of stuff, but still worrying about yourself and your well-being, because you're not going to be good taking care of people if you're not in the right mindset to take care of people. So one thing to really key to remember, especially with these pediatric codes. Just kind of going over the, you know, PALS protocol. Here, I just throw this in here, everyone can look at it, but really nothing too crazy or wide. Epidemiology, most children who arrest are males, less than 1 year old, just based on epidemiology of it. 13% survive with a good neuro. So it's actually a lot higher than adults because kids are resilient. So that number is actually pretty impressive, actually. Most common causes are respiratory events. That's why I said airway is the most important thing. Most are PEA, 7-10% are VFib. Predictors of intact survival are witness arrests, bystander CPR, and ROSC in the field. So if you get ROSC in the field, or they start CPR right away, or it's seen, it's your highest chance of survival. Approach. Remember, ABC method is still recommended. Goals are to reach normal vital signs in children. That's why because ACLS, they're talking about changing to where C is more important. And P, I don't think it's ever going to change. It's always going to be ABC first because airway is just so important to these kids. Goals to reach normal vital signs in children. Hypothermia doesn't have enough evidence to support it yet. I think it is coming. It's actually call my brother and ask to see if it changed. Use the Broslow tape. That's the key thing on these. Do not overthink this. Lay the Broslow out, throw the kid on there, and go off what the Broslow said. It was made for a reason. Use it, and it is very much intact. Advanced airway management is less important than appropriate airway support and ventilation. So that's the key thing: is open the airway, get them in the right positioning, being sure you're doing it. You don't have to throw a tube in right away, but if you do it. But that's the biggest thing, is just being sure their airway is in a good position, that they're getting good air. Administer blood or crystalloids when indicated. Remember, bolus is 20 mils per kilo. Early attempt at IO placement. That is also key. 2 breaths, 30 compressions. If bleeding, consider TXA or blood. If rhythm is shockable, defibrillate. 2 joules per kilo, then 4 joules per kilo. Being sure to, talk through it and all that kind of stuff is key. Being sure everyone is on the same page is key on this thing. Initial dose is 0.01 of the 1 to 10,000. Then keep giving it every 3 to 5 minutes. If shockable, you go ahead and shock. Can consider amiodarone 5 mg per kg for lidocaine. This also, I think I wanted to add in because I know on this code I don't think it was. As that's one thing I was wondering, is if you guys know what color they are on the Broslow, when you're calling in, tell us what color so we can then, because our pediatric cards are color coded based on the color. So I can just immediately just pop that open and pull it out. And I know that's the drawer that we're staying in. So if you tell us the color of the kit that you're bringing in, that then makes our preparation of all the meds and everything already streamlined before you just even get there. So even if it's like, hey, I'm coming with a pediatric code, it's a pink, cool. Now I'm like, honestly, that's enough. And we get the name and birthday. That is all I need. Then you guys can tell us the rest here. But color is like just as important as the name, because then it gives us which direction we're going when they get here. And I can just be prepared already for the medications. So that's kind of one little helpful hint that helps us on our end. And it's a simple saying a color. And you guys already know because you're going through it. It's just remembering to say the color. If ROSC, consider mechanical ventilation. Ketamine is probably going to be our best source for sedation. Fluids and compressors can be considered. Again, we're not cooling babies. ETD, CO2, greater than 20 was not associated with survival. CO2 less than 10 showed no findings associated with decreased survival. There hasn't really been many studies. It's hard to study kids because it doesn't happen all the time. So the studies are still new coming out. They did look at compression only CPR. Relies on a reservoir of oxygen in the lungs at time of arrest. Children more frequently arrest from respiratory etiologies than adults. Therefore, this reservoir of oxygen in the lungs may already be depleted at time of arrest. That's why they have not changed from the breathing in kids, because airway and oxygen is so important in kids, because mainly it's all airway based. Good thing I always think just to go through is just remembering normal vital signs in kids. We see adults 90% of the time, so we know vital signs when it comes to adults like the back of our hand, but sometimes we forget about normal vital signs in kids, how they are different. So just kind of do a good memory tool. I personally do this all the time. I try it at least like once a month, just kind of go over my Pete's vital signs reminder again, because it's like, oh my God, goodness, their heart rate's 140. Yeah, okay, it's cool. It's a neonate. They're less than 28 days. That's gonna be normal. It's like just knowing what you're dealing with, and that can be very helpful. So, all right, that is it. Why don't we take a quick break while you get the next one going? Get some water, stand up. And we'll play through this next one. Questions on kids stuff? No? Okay. I need water. That's
Hey, also, you know where Darla Bowes offices?
Or who?
Darla Bowes or Janet Cloak, you know where their offices? I don't. Oh, Janet's like, right now, but
Yeah.
no idea.
My guess is the third floor, like where admin and we're chilling and all that marks.
Okay.
That's computers.
Yeah. It's like
Okay.
back
I
corner,
was
isn't it?
there.
Yeah.
I got it.
That's where Janet's was.
Class full in that
Yeah,
class.
I signed it.
Yeah, I've got the second part. One of the pieces of paper, you know, the agreement, the state stuff, yeah, us for doing like those ER rotations. I've got a new contract. Man, it's like, you know, obviously longer term, but it's.
Yes.
Man,
It's a pain.
it's like, you just know that, like, let's say with the cops, our city attorney, I believe, but. It just seems.
Right now, it's the pain, I know. Medics are saying, you're supposed to have 3 to 2 in your first year. She only had 2, so she was calling to see if she had severe anesthesia too,
Yeah.
in OR, but there's no agreement with Clarkston and St. Joe's. And then Tri-State's like, yeah, we don't have agreement either. So she's like, what do you do? So the other day, I had a card and I called her, like, hey, are you free? She's like, yeah. I was like, here, we need 2 related to come down. I'll sign off on you. Like, but you can do it here anyways when you're bringing patients here.
I know.
You just can't, it's
stupid. It's stupid. It's like.
It's stupid.
And it's funny how many people don't know.
No, they don't.
They understand what you, is a part of the process. Yeah. After goes.
You have to have a license with the hospital.
You have to have your insurance, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that when you guys are doing like your residency, do you have to go get your own insurance? We need.
No. Yeah, they just have, we have like a jail basically, and I want to rotate, which they're already set up. So, we already have litigation agreements with all these people, but no, we get paid. So that's where, so government, so Medicare, Medicaid covers residency funding. So basically, it's $250,000 per resident per year is what the hospital gets. And what that is deviated, part of it goes like to your admin staff and all that kind of stuff. Part of it's also for a rotation. So say I do a rotation at a different hospital than I mainly am at, they actually get that funding. So then they're writing them like a $10,000 check for me to go work there.
The time you're there.
Because they're paying to teach and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like this, where there's, you have to have an agreement on where that money actually goes in residency, because for us, it's, there's a big pool of money that comes in.
Yeah.
When it comes to residency.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize, yeah, it's $250,000 per resident per year, so the hospital gets paid.
So it's not a bad idea to have a residence in your hospital.
Something you have to have to teach. It slows down, I mean, it is a good idea right now, it just takes a lot of time, you have to have the doctors that want to be able to teach. It can't slow things down, you also have higher chance of liability and litigation, for that, 'cause you have new doctors working, so it's like, it's a risk benefit thing.
Yeah.
but Still make decent money.
I think for us, it's a good recruiting tool too, but
I've been pushing it for a while.
well, there's the one that Laura's working for that. That's, yeah, program to move down. There's a. The state to state, it has to go to city council. It's government to government rules, it's go to city council. So then you got all ours involved. I'm like, or it's not, I was like, but it's not a requirement of the program. You can like, I said, that's good. So you can just do I can just sign them up for observer right along.
Yeah, same thing the med students do.
Exactly. We have a hearing with them though.
Yeah, it helps. We did that one the right way though.
Yes, and we would do this thing correctly, but also like some of it, I'm like, do we need to? Because it's still, they're still observing. They're not doing it still.
No, I tell them they can't do skills.
That's why I'm like, I don't even, I'm for this piece, I'm not gonna observe.
No, just doing it.
Yeah.
It's also different than anyone, Joe Blow off the street, if I ask him to do one signing paperwork, once they sign that away, they're cool with it.
Yeah.
The PA's okay with signing it.
That's why I'm like, we're not. We're not teaching anything. They're just inviting.
They're not actually treating patients.
They're taking patients so much.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even with the EMT students coming to the hospital, they're actually touching patients.
They do.
It needs to be,
It's more.
yeah, definitely more. This has got to, I mean, you get the vitals and all the other things.
All right, you guys ready?
Back in place.
Let's get through this.
Sounds to be back.
Good, look
in
at
place. I'm gonna,
All right, do some OB-GYN stuff. Normal vaginal delivery, out of hospital deliveries have higher rates of maternal and fetal complications. Perineal tears, retained placenta, postpartum hemorrhage, hypothermia, hypoglycemia, and jaundice. Out of hospital deliveries are more common in multiparous mothers and often occur at night between, of course, 11 and 6 a.m. So you guys are just crying. But the thing is, as we all know, once you've had one baby, the second baby's probably coming faster and they're not as ready for it. So that's why these out of hospitals are definitely more common when you're multi-parous compared to just one-time, first-time moms. Normal spontaneous vaginal delivery, stage 1, it's a cervical. So starts with regular contractions and ends with complete effacement and dilation of the cervix. Average is 8 hours in nulliparous mothers and 5 hours in the multiparous mothers. Gestational age, you can kind of measure. This is kind of that trick. They say if you push on the fundus right at the belly button, there's going to be about 20 weeks of the fundus is at the belly button. For every centimeter up is about a growth a week until you're at 36. And once they're 36, they're just about ready to get a baby. That's kind of your thought process. So kind of the thought process of that. The main reason why the 20 weeks is important is, me personally, is if I do have a mom in cardiac arrest, basically, if the fundus is higher than that umbilicus, that means there's a chance baby can't survive. So that's where if I have a mom in cardiac arrest, I then can cut out baby as long as fundus is above the belly button. Because that way you're thinking baby's probably greater than 20 weeks, has a chance of baby survival, so then I can just do a perimortem C-section on mom and actually pull baby. In order for me to do that, mom has to code at the hospital or within, I think it's 2 minutes. It's really the same as me doing an open thoracotomy on a patient. It's the same exact process on when we actually decide whether or not to say baby. Because if mom is dead, you have a very short window until baby's going to be dead to be able to pull that baby out and start resuscitating baby. So that's why this 20 weeks is kind of important. It's kind of measuring about what they're at, but it kind of gives you a good idea on where mom is when you're bringing them in. Also helpful, if they're probably fundus, then I think they're probably going straight to OB. So that's also what I'm pretty jacked about. You guys just bypass us in the ER. Stage 2 is expulsions. This begins at complete effacement and continues until delivery of the fetus. 36 to 57 minutes compared to 17, 19 minutes in multiparous moms. Your cardinal movements, engagement, flexion, descent, internal rotation, extension, external rotation. Get the mom in the lithotomy position. As fetus descent, stretch the perineum to prevent perineal tears. Mother pushes for 3 to 10 second intervals. As head emerges, inferior hand supports the chin and superior supports the occiput. So behind the head, because they're going to turn. Then is when you palpate for that nuchal cord to see if you have to pull that nuchal cord up over the head as they're delivering. As head delivers, it will turn to one side. And the hand should now support both sides of the head and provide gentle downward traction to deliver that anterior shoulder. So when it comes out, they're going to turn, try to get that anterior shoulder out first, then work on that posterior, and then pull the baby out. Section mouth and nostrils, but you may skip if it's obviously screening and yelling, but still try to suction up. Consider delay cord clamping at least 30 to 60 seconds, as this has been shown to increase hemoglobin levels. Most moms want to hold the baby immediately, so you're also not wrong. Check baby, make sure baby's good. Handing baby up to mom, and then start working on the cord stuff as that is happening. Clamp the cord 3 centimeters from insertion, and again 4 to 5 centimeters, and then cut between the clamps. Then remember to, if mom's dealing with baby's good, remember then to start focusing on placenta as well. Stages of labor, so this is kind of they're coming out. That's what we're talking about. So here's where the head first comes out. Support the occiput, support it down here. Then baby's going to be turning. start working on the anterior shoulder, and then you get the delivery of the posterior shoulder. Nuchal cord, that's one of the problems here. So it's the nuchal cord sitting around a kid's neck when they're coming out. Most commonly, this is when you're going to see it, is right when their head pops out, you're going to see a cord around the neck. Literally, it's just to go underneath, pull it around the head, whichever way it is, and then reduce it. If you're unable to reduce it, you can wait till delivery and then you can reduce it afterwards, but it's probably best to do it sooner than later because it is around the kid's neck. Just that's one of the things you just always want to feel. It's actually 29% of deliveries that actually occur. So it's actually a lot more common than you realize. Both my kids had it when I delivered both our kids. Both of them had nuchal cords. Alternatively, if loose, you can't deliver baby. Last resort is you can clamp it and then cut and then deliver baby, but I really don't like that situation. So try to get it over or try to deliver baby. That I feel like that should be OB stuff and we're doing that, but it is an option if you have to be able to get baby out. Then, like I said, don't forget about placenta. Begins after delivery of the fetus until delivery of the placenta. Normally 5 to 7 minutes after. There are signs of placental separation. So spontaneous lengthening of the cord. You kind of hold a little bit of pressure on that with the clamp. That's kind of how I did it. And you just kind of slow pull. Then also you start feeling it release. Not pulling too hard. Pulling a little bit of tension. Then it will start coming out. If it doesn't, low gentle traction can help. They have higher chance of postpartum hemorrhage if it does not get all delivered. And be sure to look for any missing pieces. That's the key thing, to be sure there's no products of conception still up in there. Those are your highest chances of postpartum hemorrhage, is if there is leftover placenta. They'll just keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding until we get the rest of that placenta out. And you guys are not going up there. I'm not going up there. That's where an OB goes up there and gets that. That is well past all of our pay grades. APGAR, reduce these on kids. Can I just do kind of a quick one on it? It's pretty obvious. Easy scale, 0 to 2. 2 is normal, 0 is not good, 1's in the middle. Kind of go from there. So greater than 7 is normal, 4 to 6 is low, less than 3 is critically low. And it's always done at 1 in 5 minutes. Shoulder dystocia, it's kind of your one worrisome ones that can occur. This is when that shoulder gets stuck on the way out. So you'll see a kid come out, and all of a sudden the head will come out, and then it'll suction right back to it. And they'll sit there and hold. It is scary because the kid's head turns blue. I had one residency that I delivered that had it, and it was not fun. Most common you can do is this McRoberts procedure, which we'll kind of show here in a second. But kind of moving to it is the biggest thing is when you see it is just kind of getting ready to do McRoberts. McRoberts is hyperflexion. So you want to get someone to hyperflex the legs, both legs forward. So they're going to be pushing like that. And then the other person, and then whoever was holding one of the legs, then they'll start doing suprapubic pressure. Not fundal pressure, suprapubic pressure. Because really what you're trying to do is push that shoulder directly down to be able to make it through there. I mean, it's simple physics. The shoulder is too big. Let's see if we can make the shoulder smaller to then go in to then actually deliver the baby. Commonly, actually, you doing this, a lot of times actually what happens is you'll break the collarbone on the kid and they'll actually go through. Collarbones will heal very quickly and you won't even know it because it's all cartilage. And all these kids are cartilage anyways, and they just bend and go right back to where they're supposed to be. So you can actually put quite a bit of pressure when delivering them to be able to try and get that shoulder out. Other one is this Reuben. I'm really not a huge fan of this sticking things up in there. So you can actually stick a hand in there and try and rotate the kid by pushing that anterior shoulder more anterior on the baby and trying to rotate them towards the chest. The Woods corkscrew is place one hand on the anterior aspects of the posterior shoulder, and they actually try to rotate them posteriorly towards the fetal back to get them out. And then you got the reverse Woods corkscrew, which is then going the other way, where you stick your fingers and you try to roll them to their chest. So not a huge fan of many of these, but I like just the hyperflexion and suprapubic. I think the Rubens is hands down, or the McRoberts is hands down the best one to do. You guys are ballsy enough to do that, and you can. Gaskin is reposition mother, hands and veto out for gravity to deliver the shoulder. Also another option. Breech delivery, instead of breech, decreases with gestational age. So the older they are, the less likely it has to happen. Still give them lithotomy position. Maintain hands off the fetus as much as possible until umbilicus has presented. Do not pull the fetus. Once umbilicus is visualized, assist in delivery of the legs, arms, and head as needed. Key thing on this is if the cord pops out a little bit, but one time you have to do something is if the cord is popping out, lift whatever extremity is on that, especially against gravity, because that's going to pinch off the cord, decrease blood flow. So if you are, I would not be a huge fan of delivering a breech kid out in the field for you guys. But if anything does happen and you see a cord, be sure to just lift it and just hold it until you get here. And unless the baby is coming out and you have to deliver, but basically lift off the cord is the number one thing. So that way baby is still getting good blood flow through that cord. Yeah, this is the Pinard maneuver for breech delivery. You sit there and just reach up and externally rotate and grab a leg and, you know, just kind of pull her out like that. No fun. I'm not a huge fan of it. Same thing here. After this, you rotate 180 degrees and deliver the other arm. And then this is where you do get fundal pressure, suprapubic fundal pressure, kind of pushing the head out, then expose it over. The goal is to get the kid's face down and be able to pull them out like that. Some other issues that you can have during pregnancy is pre-labor rupture of membranes. That's going to be the sudden gush of clear liquid from the vagina without any contraction. So they're not ready to have a baby, but the amniotic sac popped. Can occur term or preterm. 93% pre-labors ruptured less than 34 weeks, but they will normally deliver within 7 days. You're actually very, very high risk of intrauterine infection. That's the main thing with this, is these patients can become septic very, very quickly. Sterile speculum exam, digital exam should be avoided. I don't even go in there and look at these things. I make OB come in and look at them. Get way higher than my pay grade. Truth antibiotics. If they are preterm, we give steroids to help with fetal lung development. Placenta previa. So this is just the placenta partially over the cervical os, or it can be complete. So depending on what side it is. This is common where your patients will have a lot of some bleeding, like around the 20 to 30 week range. They'll start having because it starts to stretch. Head starts to push on a little bit, especially just covering the os. If they go to OB care, they should know about this. They say, hey, I have placenta previa. Placenta previa is just something you watch. Be sure they're not bleeding out, all that kind of stuff is the biggest thing. They will have a little bit of bleeding, but not nearly as bad. They're in active labor though. They need to do a C-section because you can't push through a placenta. Biggest things also, we do not do speculum exams on these because I don't want to poke the placenta. Bad news happens. I do that. Placenta abruption. Now, this is something that is the bad one that you need to worry about. Occurs when normally implanted placenta separates from the uterus before delivery of the fetus. Commonly, these will be in trauma. That's the most common that you'll see this. You can tell there is other risk factors as well. This can be your 35-week parent that is not having any contractions, gets in a car wreck, and has a whole bunch of blood sitting in your seat when you show up. A good chance the wreck caused the placenta to come off. Now baby's not getting any nutrients. That is now an emergent C-section, hemorrhagic shock. We need to give that patient blood, fluids, TXA, and ship them to the OB unit because they need to pull that baby out now. So that is definitely the bad one. And these patients, they bleed a crap ton. These are ones that we do second acid transfusion protocols. These are, you know when it happens, this is some real bleeding that occurs. The weird ones they kind of think that's kind of weird about those, the cocaine use is definitely one that is a high chance of this. The one I saw in residency, actually, she was a cocaine user. That's what actually caused it. Also, the thing is, it's normally going to be painful vaginal bleeding. So they're going to have a whole bunch of pain. 90% of all the vaginal bleeding cases you guys probably go on. So I was like, yeah, I just started bleeding and I'm worried about it. That's not this. They're going to be very painful as that placenta just ripped off it. They're going to be hurting like hell if this is actually occurring. Postpartum hemorrhage, cumulative blood loss of greater than 1,000 mLs or bleeding associated with hypovolemia within 24 hours of birth. more and more people are doing at-home births, so you guys could be, there's higher chances of you guys seeing these, especially out there. Tachycardic hypotensive, you treat these the exact same as you would any hemorrhagic shock patient. Fluids, TXA, drive fast to the hospital. There's no blood yet, so we can't do that, but that's the biggest thing. The uterus will feel boggy, so if you do aggressive uterine massage, that will help with this. So really just sit there and massage that uterus to sometimes get that uterus to contract and hopefully help us out with the bleeding. That is the key thing. But yes, giving products, TXA, and aggressive uterine massage and diesel are how you treat these. How to properly do a uterine massage. Try to get both hands on either side and just try to cup it and just massage it. This is something that you guys probably won't do, but I can consider doing, is you just stick a hand up there and just try to stop the bleeding. Simply, it's no different than a bleeding cut, just tamponade it. Try and get the bleeding to stop by shoving a fist and trying to get it to stop. This is the things that they make. I think Tri-State now carries one of these over there. Where you go and just have a balloon now. Where you go in there and you'll fill a balloon up basically and tamponade it from the inside. With a one-way valve and sterile water, we'll do that. It's shove it in and blow it up. Preeclampsia and eclampsia. So new onset is hypertension after 20 weeks. PRN or signs of end organ damage. That is when you're going to be diagnosed with preeclampsia. And the key thing about this is also after labor up to. So even after a mom gave birth up to 6 weeks, if they are hypertensive and having some headaches, blurry vision, shaking, all those kind of things, they can still have preeclampsia. They need to see their OB, but we also can take care of them in the ER as well. But it can occur even after birth. Eclampsia is when we actually have seizures in a patient with preeclampsia. Blood pressure is key on all of these, so see what the blood pressure is. That's why I said all pregnant patients need to have a blood pressure taken, just to be sure they're not preeclamptic or eclamptic. Presentation normally is going to be a headache, epigastric or upper quadrant pain, extremity swelling, so that's going to be the proteinuria. They look like our CHF patients. They'll gain almost 30-40 pounds like about 2 weeks before birth if they do get preeclamptic, and all of it's just water weight that they're gaining. You can get this petechial rash. That's going to be your thrombocytopenia. When you have that, we worry more about HELLP syndrome, which is kind of tied with preeclampsia. That means they're getting low platelets and liver enzymes are also going to be elevated. The liver is just not functioning. So there's other things we worry about with that when we see it. So be sure to look at the legs, look at the body, be sure there's not a rash. Treatment is delivery, blood pressure control, and we start MAG. If it is eclampsia, you give MAG. But yes, also give seizure medications if they're seizing. You are okay to give benzos and all that kind of stuff. Yes, I know the treatment for you guys, it's MAG, but it's also a seizure, so treat the seizure as well. But you probably will not give the seizure to stop it until you start giving it. So give the MAG and kind of go from there. Changes during pregnancy. So these are how moms and them will change as you become more pregnant, which I think is something that we have to remember, is diminished arterial blood pressure. They will have, so the higher blood losses may be difficult to detect because they already are holding more blood. Patients should be transported in the left lateral decubitus position. That's kind of whenever you resuscitate a mom, because what they're doing is you're getting them off the IVC because that's your return blood flow. The aorta is strong enough to have the fetus on top of it, but IVC is not. Relative anemia, diminished platelets. They will have an elevated diaphragm, so their tidal volumes will definitely be decreased. Their minute ventilation will be increased, but they also will not be getting as much volume as well because it's pushing up higher placement, higher it's up in there. If you do a chest tube, you probably want to be about a little bit higher. You do it in a mom, or needle decompress, because remember everything's pushed up. So think about that if it is a pregnant mom and if you are putting one in. They're more difficult to intubate. They normally have more fluid and thicker necks normally. There's kind of not really much else important stuff. Maternal resuscitation, tachycardia and hypotension are late findings of shock in these moms due to increased maternal blood volume. Minute ventilation total incapacity and reserve volume decrease, thus making them more prone to desaturation. Increased risk for thromboembolism. Treatment. The key things, if they're greater than 20 weeks, get them in that left lateral decubitus and get manual displacement of the uterus, because that a lot of times will help these patients a ton, just because sometimes the baby, the way they're laying, is just sitting around their IVC, and that can be causing a lot of these issues. So lay them on that left side, and if you can, just sit there and push and grab that fetus and just like pull it to the side to get it off. That is what is key for this. So this is the thing. Sit there and either pull it, get them on their side, or sit there and push it to get that thing moving. Same thing with this. This actually shows a good picture of it. So you can tell your IVC's here, here's your aorta. When you're sitting there pulling this off, it gets that pressure off of that side of the IVC, because the IVC runs along the left, runs along the that side. So it should be able to help it when it goes down there. Kind of it. If you do have a coding mom, that should be one of the first things you ever do. The mom is unconscious and not breathing. You want to lay them on their left side and try and push, because immediately then and start chest compressions if you can. But if you can actually do chest compressions with them in that side position, that's going to help a chance, because then maybe they had that, the IVC was just completely pinched off. You move that and displace it, start doing chest compressions, push blood around. The mom, good chance they may come back, just because it all was just IVC compression that's causing this. So that is your first thing. And if you said, if you're gonna do chest compressions, do it to them in this position, not just laying right on their back. So I imagine you guys could just do that with the Lucas, put the Lucas on, just kind of tip it up sideways a little bit, roll down, all cockeyed. Amniotic fluid embolisms, maternal inflammatory response with fetal antigen response to this. There's a lot that we don't know about this, but it's going to present basically exactly like a PE. It's actually amniotic fluid embolism that goes. These are when moms just randomly die and you can't explain it. Commonly is this. What we do in the ER and even in the hospital when you have these, you can't just like Dr. Ho just can't go and like pull these out. It's like an amniotic fluid thing, and you can't. So we literally just treat and cross our fingers and hope that the body dissolves it, and give them pressors, try to do airway management, mechanical ventilation, all that kind of stuff. So definitely scary. These are just they're going to present exactly like a PE. Endometritis, inflammation of the uterine lining, can affect all layers of the uterus. Fever is the most common presenting symptom. They will also have abdominal pain, but they also have foul smelling, lochia. So the stuff coming out is just rank, and they say it smells horrible. That means they have some type of endometritis. They probably had premature rupture of membranes, probably is what ultimately caused it. And after birth, that's what this is. It's what they have. They do get toxic shock really quickly. So pay attention to that. Resuscitation, just like normal sepsis patients. Resuscitate them, and we give antibiotics. Mastitis, common in nursing women. Times. Mastitis, they can turn into abscesses. They'll be painful, red, swollen breasts. They will have flu-like symptoms with it as well. They can have this web-shaped erythemus. That means it's probably in like one little part of the breast. The treatment though is continue breastfeeding off that side. A lot of moms will be like, oh, I don't want to breastfeed on that side because it's all infected. No, having the baby actually feed from it will actually get that pus out. Kids can eat pus, it's just fine. They can swallow it, it's no problem. But they want to completely empty the breast and keep on feeding, as that will be what treats it, is getting that stuff out of it. It's like normal abscess. You have an abscess where we do poke and drain it. We don't want to poke breasts because they're full of milk, and then they're going to get all loculated and not function correctly. So the way is you get the pus out, the way you get it out is you have to continue to feed. So allow them to keep on feeding. We do treat with antibiotics, but these will be the looks that you have on them. So they're real red and angry. And kind of be like more in that wedge shape because they're all loculated in a certain area. So it's a pus, it's probably going to be like a little abscess in a certain part of the breast. So nausea and vomiting in the pregnant patient. Common in early pregnancy, due to dehydration. Sniffing alcohol pads is one that you can tell people to do at home that works good. IV fluids is key. Us in the ER, my favorite is D5 half normal. It works magic for these pregnant ladies. Zofran is okay in pregnancy. You're okay to get it. Benadryl, you also can get as well. So it's kind of if you have a patient that there's vomiting, you need to go there. That's kind of what I do. Zofran, and then backup would be Benadryl afterwards. You can do droperidol if it is severe as well. That one is safe in pregnancy too. Miscarriage, first trimester bleeding or pain, occurs in 10 to 14% of clinically recognized pregnancies. A third of patients experience a miscarriage during the reproductive years. So very high percent. 50% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. Many even are unknown. We just need to know the blood type, which they can follow with their OB. If pregnant with any bleeding, we need to know if an ultrasound has been done yet. So we need to find out if there's a baby within the uterus. Because if it's not, then you worry about ectopic pregnancy that's causing the bleeding. Unstable is 2 to 3 pad changes every hour. So this is when I know you guys bring a lot of patients in, hey, they had some vaginal bleeding, and I literally do nothing for them. So I have no problem with you leaving, but leaving the patients there and explaining to them, what we worry about is this part right here. Is if they have enough bleeding that it is 2 to 3 pads an hour, those are reasons to come to the ER because you probably need a DNC. Or if they have never had an ultrasound before, we need to rule out ectopic pregnancy. Those are 2 of the main reasons why you have to come to the ER, because we have to be able to do that to rule out those bad things. And then the 2 to 3 changes, because some people are like, well, I'm bleeding, I'm just kind of going a little bit. And they're like, so when's too much? When do I need to come in? That is the number. 2 to 3 pads an hour. Completely saturated. That is when it's enough bleeding to matter that we'll probably do a DNC. Or if they have vital sign changes, then we bring them in. So if you have that conversation with parents, those are moms, this is kind of the conversation to have with them. But again, if they're worried about it, bring them in. I'll have that discussion as well. All of us are fine with it. Ectopic pregnancy, that is basically a pregnancy that's sitting outside of the uterus. So it's supposed to be normal pregnancy, implanted embryo here. In this case, it is possibly abdominal, possibly on the ovary, in the fallopian tubes. Most common is actually going to be in the infundibulum. It's going to be right in here. It's the most common cause of it. And that's actually number one cause of death in moms is because if it ruptures and bleeds inside the belly, they can get sick really quick and they can bleed a lot inside the belly. It's basically just like open hemorrhage of the belly. So once those things get big enough to pop and break those, they'll just bleed and bleed and bleed and bleed in the belly, and you don't really notice it. Shockingly, every one of these I've had, the patients have not been in that much belly pain. They're pretty stoic. They're just like, oh yeah, my belly just kind of hurts, but I'm pregnant, so I just kind of want to check out, be sure baby's okay. And they yet to have an ultrasound done. And I would put money on it that this patient was never in that much pain. Like most of them, they have very, very little abdominal pain. But if it ruptures, then it's a surgical emergency. They go straight to the OR. They pull a fallopian tube and cut the embryo out. Sexual assault patients. Be sure to bring the patient to the ED, and police also need to be involved. Do not remove any clothing. Do not allow patient to pee prior to coming to the ED because we need all those samples. In the ER, what we do is we do a thorough exam, STD treatment, HIV treatment, emergency contraception. That we do deal with the why I talked about safe housing with an advocate and all that stuff. So there's definitely a process, but honestly, with these patients, if you just throw them in the seat and drive them, that's the biggest thing. Don't do anything. And law enforcement will kind of do the rest as well. We'll talk about the fun parts, the male GU emergencies. Testicular torsion. Testicular pain is sudden in onset and associated with nausea and vomiting after vigorous activity or minor trauma. Commonly confused with abdominal pain in children. One of my key things I always do is I always look at the testicles in a kid that has belly pain. Just to be sure they're not discolored or one's not super high riding or anything like that. I think it's also good for you guys to consider doing it too, especially in a good situation. I also use it as a teaching tool for kids. I'm saying, hey, no one's supposed to look unless, they're doctors or medical professionals and mom and dad, and basically also make kind of a teaching moment as well. But looking for any kid with belly pain, checking those testicles is a key. This is actually I think it's actually one of the biggest ways of forms of litigation for suing are people that miss this because they come with belly pain and no one ever looks at the testicles. Because like I said, most commonly it's confused with abdominal pain in children. On exam, you'll have a high riding testicle. It will a lot of times be riding horizontal rather than actually running up and down. Cremasteric reflex, that's where you just brush the inside of the inner thigh and the testicle should raise up on that side. If it has that reflex, if it doesn't, then it's more likely to be a testicular torsion. There'll be edema, erythema, swelling, and tenderness of that testicle itself. To detorsum, you do it like a book. You just grab it, you open it. You never want to do closing a book. They tell you it's the open book method. So whatever one it is, you'll sit there and just open it and try to turn it like you're turning a page. That can be what you can do to hopefully keep from having emergent surgery and hopefully getting some blood flow to the testicle. The other thing we worry about is priapism. So it's prolonged painful erection. Asked about prior episodes, because most of these people, they've had it before. Commonly it's certain medications or trauma or blood diseases that can do it, but most commonly certain medications. I think, here's a list of the medications here. So as you can tell, there's a ton of medications that can cause this, and very common ones like heparin, Coumadin, bupropion, lithium, olanzapine, propranolol, alcohol, cocaine, marijuana. There's common meds that we see all the time that people take that can cause this. So to treat this, you can inject phenylephrine, but all we do to inject it is a lot of times I will numb up the edge of the penis right here, but this is literally just the penis here. And what you do is you stick a needle. As long as you go in at 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock, you can actually push all the way through and you never disrupt the urethra. What we do is we go in with the biggest needle I can. So I got like an 18 or 19 gauge needle. And I'll go in there and stick it in until I get in this cavernosa here. Then you just suck blood out as much as I can. A lot of times you just undo the syringe, just set it there, and blood will just pour out. So what I want to do is I want to drain this side, and you wait, and the penis literally will start just like going because it has less blood. It'll start just curving. And once it kind of less blood comes out, then what I do is I advance the needle further to then gain this guy. And then that starts draining. Not a fun procedure for anyone. But the pain that they have from that priapism that's been up for like 24 hours, they don't mind it normally. It's been a while. I actually haven't seen one. It's been a while since I have seen one here. I saw a bunch of residency because we had much more sickle cell patients over there. So it was much more common than sickle cell. But yeah, I did not. A urologist told me that as long as you go in at 9 and 3 o'clock, you push all the way through the penis and nothing bad can happen. I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. But that's what they say because the urethra sits way down here around so as long as you don't get around the 5 or the 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock region, you're good to go. And I was like, I don't know. I think differently about it. Phimosis and paraphimosis. The bad phimosis is less bad. Paraphimosis, I would say the paramedics are coming. That's the worst ones. That's how we are always taught it. Paraphimosis is the worst one that actually needs immediate surgical stuff. So phimosis is when the foreskin cannot be retracted over the glands. Normal in young children are pathologic in recurrent infections or scarring. They can cause urinary obstructions. The biggest thing is, can they pee? If they can pee, there's nothing to do about this. It'll slowly work its way and they can follow urology. Treatment, if it does become a problem, they do a dorsal slit, so they actually cut the dorsal portion of the foreskin to then allow it to release. So paraphimosis is penile swelling and pain due to constricting band that prevents the foreskin from retracting. So it basically gets stuck and then you're basically not getting blood flow to the glands of the penis. So that is going to be it is going to be red, black, angry glands of the penis that then we have to try and reduce. And you reduce it just by manual retraction. Try and grab that thing and try to pull and push it back in place. So this is going to be phimosis. So it's stuck. You can't pull it down. And then this is the dorsal slit. So we're doing the dorsal slit. We literally just cut the foreskin here. You clamp it first. So this is a clamp to decrease blood flow. And then afterwards, then you'll cut a line after you've done that. And then this is paraphimosis. See how red and angry and not happy that penis is. So that's the issue is right here. This thing is so edematous that it's starting to actually constrict the head of the penis, so then you're not getting as much blood flow to the glands. So this thing needs to get folded forward. So it's literally just try and push it forward. Try to get it in. Balanitis is inflammation of the glands of the penis alone. Commonly, it's normally due to candida, just people not cleaning well. Daily foreskin retraction, soaking warm, and then topical antifungals and steroid agent can help. But that is, again, these are going to be your old nursing home patients, a lot of times Foley patients that need that. There's nothing emergent normally. This is the emergency, Fournier's gangrene. This is a rare, deadly, necrotizing soft tissue infection of the perineum and scrotum GU area. Early recognition is key to reduce mortality. Most commonly, it's in diabetic males with severe groin pain, swelling, erythema with systemic symptoms as well. These patients become real shocky very, very quickly. And this is like immediate surgery. You take them straight to the OR. These patients die very, very quickly. So if they're having pain in there, they're septic, they're not looking good. Also, it's like if you look at it, like when you actually see a true Fournier's gangrene, it is disgustingly gross. It is like it's actually described the fluid that comes out of it is dirty dishwater fluid that comes out of it, and it is real. That's exactly what it is. If you were to clean your dishwasher out, like the grossness and like that's what it looks like coming out. It's disgusting. That is the picture of Fournier's gangrene involving the penis. So it's all been dead there for a little bit and necrotizing. Gross. This is like another one. So you actually see the fistulas and the redness sitting underneath when it's all in the perineum there. Disgusting. And there's another one of the scrotum and penis that's all dead and not doing well. So that's all you got. We're standing on those pictures. Any questions, concerns, life lessons? No. Cool. All right. Good talk, guys. See you in 2 months.
No, not really.
On my list. Oh, there wasn't that many.
No, there were more, but they didn't sign in, so there were more.
That's the ones that'll call us.
Aye.